JR works the knee. Sorry. JR works the knee.
JR with a run-in to help Flair, yeah.
Uh, Hello, everyone, and welcome to Let's Go to the Ring, where we take a look at the good old days and not so good old days of World Championship Wrestling series by series. I'm your host, Bob Moore, and I'm joined by a man who is still reeling from the revelation that he's the son of an AWA wrestling referee, Alec Bridgen.
I don't know what to say. I'm just still reeling, you know?
How's it going tonight, Al?
It's going well. How about yourself?
I'm doing all right. It's reports week at work, so pretty tired out. So I'm glad that tonight I get to come on with you and discuss, honestly, no spoilers, or I guess slight spoilers, but a really good show.
Yeah, sure.
This one was a ton of fun to watch. I'm very glad that we've done this series, but if I say any more, I'll have to cut the episode short, so I think I'll move on to the intro.
Fair enough.
So, as noted, it's time to start our newest series. It is always fun starting a new set of shows, but this time is particularly exciting, as we are looking at the WCW New Japan Supershows, starting with 1991's Supershow I, known in Japan as Starrcade in Tokyo Dome. We have always enjoyed the little touches of New Japan Pro Wrestling on WCW shows, so seeing 3 whole shows focused exclusively on their partnership should be a load of fun.
Absolutely.
WCW New Japan Super Show 1 was held on March 21st, 1991 at the Tokyo Dome, also referred to as the Big Egg, which is awesome.
It is, yeah.
In Tokyo, Japan, in front of 54,500 fans per ProWrestlingHistory.com. Wikipedia lists 64,500, but the Tokyo Dome seating is only listed as up to 55,000. Either way, given that we can't really count Collision in Korea for attendance records due to the likelihood that people weren't attending by choice,
Yeah.
that makes this the largest crowd for a show that we have yet covered by far.
Yeah, I guess so.
Prior to this, our largest single arena crowd has been Slamboree 1999 at the TWA Dome with 20,516, though that was outdone twice if we count double arena shows. Starrcade 1986 got 30,000 across 2 arenas, and Starrcade 1985 got 32,000 across 2 arenas. Super Show 1 smashed all of those.
I know there is the question of how you count the outdoor venues.
True, yes.
Watching the 1995 Bash of the Beach, they would claim some outlandish numbers. They were saying 100,000 people were there, and we're like, I don't think so.
Those numbers are just bonkers out there, yeah.
Yeah. And even if you're counting people that walked up, they again literally walked up. So it's not paid attendance.
Right.
It's hey, go to the beach. What's this big crowd for? Let's walk over and see. Boom, you counted now.
Yeah, so at the very least we can say it's the largest paid attendance crowd that was going there by their own choice.
Yes, correct.
It's possible, depending on who you believe, that there might be a larger crowd in attendance at a WCW show, depending on how you count the beach one and everything, but I don't think so. Looking at the size of the crowd on that show versus the size of the crowd on this show, I feel like this is loads bigger.
Now, maybe with the Road Wild and Hogwild shows, if you count the bikes separately.
All the ones that are going by, or no, as you know, the actual motorcycles.
Yeah, the actual bikes. I mean, they all have names, there are Harleys. There's a lot of Harleys there, that's all.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
Since 1992, the year after this show, the Tokyo Dome has been home to annual New Japan Pro Wrestling events every January 4th. Since 2007, those events have been known as Wrestle Kingdom, because Japan gets all the cool names.
They really do, yeah.
Incidentally, we will actually be seeing 2 of those shows later in this series, as 1992's Super Warriors in the Tokyo Dome, and 1993's Fantastic Story in Tokyo Dome. Again, Japan has the best names for things. Were brought over here as Super Show 2 and 3, respectively.
Oh, okay.
While Supershow 1 was aired on pay per view over in America in April 1991, I was unable to find the actual pay per view numbers. Notably, today we're going to be watching the WCW version of the show. Why does this matter, you ask? Well, because the WCW version of the show is chopped down quite heavily, taking an 11 match show down to only 7 matches, a pattern that will continue for the rest of the series.
Mm-hmm.
We're not just talking about dark matches before the show either, we lose matches from throughout the show. Still, it felt most legit to us, with us being a WCW show, to watch the WCW version.
Yeah.
So, what do we lose? Well, we have Animal Hamaguchi, Kengo Kimura, Osamu Kido, and Kantaro Hoshino versus Hiro Saito, Tatsugoshi Goto, Norio Honaga, and Super Strong Machine. See again, read Japan in names.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this sounds fun. I'll admit I'm not sad I get to avoid recapping an 8-man tag.
Yeah.
Incidentally, that is the actual opening match of the show, so we're actually going to be starting with match 2. We also lose Scott Norton versus the Equalizer, which I'm not sorry about either.
No.
I like Norton, but I can't imagine that he replicated DDP's success from Bash at the Beach 1995. Next up, and this one does make me sad, we lose Big Van Vader and Crusher Bam Bam Bigelow versus Doom. That sounds fun.
It was, actually.
You found it?
Oh, yeah.
Oh my gosh. Jealous.
Now, so I think there's a reason for this.
Okay.
At a show we covered a while back, Wrestle War, they really started the whole Doom breakup angle.
Ah, gotcha.
And that's in February. This show, when it was recorded, originally it was in late March, and Doom was just kind of back together. It's a little weird that they're just kind of back together like nothing happened, because they lost their tag titles and fought each other to break up the team. It's not like, oh, we might split up later. They were literally beating the crap of each other.
But Japan, we was like, we really like these guys. Bring them over. And like, oh, okay.
Fortunately, this version is available online. I'm guessing from the original Japanese one. I found it separately, which means there's no English commentary because they didn't record it. It also means the video quality is even worse than the actual show we're watching, unfortunately. It's down to around 240p. That said, it is Vader and Bigelow, so...
You can see them.
Oh, yeah. I can talk about it briefly if you want, because I did actually watch the match.
Feel free, and definitely you're giving me that link afterwards, right?
Oh, yeah, of course. I'm surprised you did track it down yourself. Basically, the way the match plays out is Vader and Bigelow both start really strong, but then they get double teamed by Doom. Again, not playing the we're a broke up tag team thing where there's tension. They play 100% straight throughout the match. There's no like thing where they start losing advantage because they start fighting each other or arguing. It's like they didn't break up at all. So again, I can see why they kind of cut this. As sad as I am for people missing out on this match. What's really interesting about this match is that the faces in this match are Vader and Bigelow.
Oh.
While everyone in this match is an outsider, they are much more known in Japan, Bigelow and Vader. Vader, I believe, is a 2 or 3 time IWGP champion at this point.
Yeah, I know Tony mentions that at some point on the show that Vader has held the title that Fujinami holds.
Yeah, he was actually the man Fujinami beat for the title.
Oh, okay, cool. That sounds like a great match.
Again, I'll have to track that one out as well, yeah. Yeah, so it's an interesting match because after the first few minutes of it, it really is Doom controlling face and peril Bam Bam Bigelow, building up to the hot tag on Vader.
What? Oh my gosh, that sounds amazing.
Yeah, it's quite good. All the stuff you'd expect is there. Bigelow does a cartwheel during his entrance. We get a particularly nasty looking falling fridge, aka Vader's sort of jumping, throw my whole body at you move. He basically throws himself at, I believe it's Butch Reed, and it looks very unpleasant for poor Butch. And actually, even the finish of the match isn't some like big, super strong comeback for the team of Vader and Bigelow. Basically, they build a hot tag. Vader controls for a bit, but then they hit control again. Ultimately, Butch Reed goes for a top rope diving shoulder block. Vader moves out of the way. And you can kind of picture how that landing felt. Because you're just throwing your whole body with your shoulder forward and just landing flat. Yeah, so he dives. Vader moves out of the way, hits a big splash, and they win.
Okay.
Oh, and post-match, because they lose, Doom start fighting again. So I guess they didn't forget the story. They just forgot it for the match itself.
That's funny.
Yeah, I will definitely send you the link. It's negative, not great quality, not English commentary, but still quite enjoyable.
Sounds fascinating to watch, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And the final match that we're missing is Riki Choshu versus Tiger Jeet Singh for Choshu's Greatest 18 Club Championship, because again, Japan names.
Mm-hmm.
This is probably off because originally it was supposed to be Lex Luger facing Choshu, but apparently Luger's contract didn't require him to perform in Japan.
Yeah, and he's like, I don't want to go to Japan and wrestle. Yeah, I'm curious, if that match had changed and had been Luger for it. For one thing, given the context of what the belt is, which I'll discuss, it's still interesting to see what would happen with that.
Yeah.
So in 1990, New Japan established the Greatest 18 Club. It's a list of 18 people that they consider to be great wrestlers and performers. Basically, it is their Hall of Fame before there's an actual New Japan Hall of Fame, which I think is a thing now, at least in some way, shape, or form. At very least, there's Japanese Wrestling Hall of Fame, so there's something that meets that same need. So, the comprehensive list I got from Wikipedia, there's many obvious names you'd expect to be on the Greatest 18 Club. Hulk Hogan, Antonio Inoki, Bob Backlund, Lou Thez, Carl Gotch, Dusty Rhodes, Stan Hansen, Andre the Giant,
Okay.
Vern Gagne, go back to last episode.
Nice.
And also going back to last episode, Nick Bockwinkel.
Hey.
Now, there's some here that, at least to American wrestling fans, at least of a certain age, are a little less obvious. So you have Billy Robinson, Johnny Valentine, and then we have Muhammad Ali is there because they just really like Muhammad Ali. He's not a keen wrestler, but they just like him in Japan.
I guess he did have the Inoki match, right?
Oh, yeah, that's true. And there's a whole thing where him and Gorilla Monsoon have an altercation in American wrestling as well. There are also some people that are very specific to this that, okay, bear in mind that I'm obsessed with details and I co-host a wrestling podcast. I had to look these people up to get the exact details on them. So just for reference. There's a guy named Johnny Powers, who was a wrestler in the 50s, and he later was a promoter for wrestling companies in Japan. So that's a connection there. He wrestled there as well. Willem Ruska, who was an Olympian who wrestled in Japan as well. As you can tell, he's from Europe.
Okay.
There's also a wrestler from Japan called Strong Kobayashi, which is a great name. Sounds like a dish you get at a really high-end Japanese restaurant.
Yeah. It's probably spicy.
Yeah, I'd say a little bit of spice.
Mm-hmm.
Some fennel on top, maybe. Yeah. He wrestled for the WWF, excuse me, 3 W's, not 2 W's. It's just so hard to add the W instinctively.
You have to force yourself, don't you?
Yeah, the WWF. Yeah, there you go. And New Japan, of course. There's also a man named C.G. Sakaguchi, who wrestled in New Japan for decades. Now, you'll notice that there's 18 there. However, apparently Tiger Jeet Singh was originally on that list, which is probably related to him wrestling this match. However, at some point during the brief run of this title, they unofficially took him off the list and added Dusty Rhodes. So he's not part of the original group.
Okay.
In February of 1991, so just before the show, they created this title, the Greatest 18 Club Championship. It was presented by Lou Thez to Riki Choshu, so that sure is a big honor for them. I think that's actually related to a match they referenced in later with Lou Thez wrestling this final match. I bet that's probably from the same event because the timing sounds about right.
Might be.
Or very, very close together. This somehow connects to the WWF Karate Championship that Antonio Inoki was given. If you count that lineage, he held that title for 12 years. He lost it briefly to a Russian wrestler, a legit Olympian wrestler.
Mm-hmm.
They had a big shoot fight. He then won it back and held it for a while. He gave that belt when he basically got tired of having a belt that didn't really matter. He gave that belt to the same wrestler who beat him a few years earlier. This was right around the Cold War ending. It's 89. So it's hey, let's branch relation between Japan and Russia. Somehow between then and this show, it came back to New Japan because the belt that the Greatest 18 Club Championship is, in fact, that same belt.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Yeah, so Tony Inoki's WWF Karate Championship then becomes the Antonio Inoki's, basically the Hall of Fame belt for a while.
So technically, if that match had been on this show, we would have actually had a WCW performer, assuming Lex Luger had been in the match.
Sure, yeah.
A WCW performer would have been fighting for a WWF title.
That's true, yeah.
Something that would not happen until, I think, Starrcade 1996
Yes.
was when Ultimo Dragon came out with his massive array of belts, one of which was the WWF one.
Yeah. Which, yeah, weirdly, is a WWF belt they sent to Mexico and kind of forgot about until it was won in this big tournament in Japan, yeah.
So we're missing 4 of them, but we've still got 7 matches to watch. So let's go to the ring. We kick things off with a song that I am almost sure has been used for Japanese wrestler entrances in WCW on other shows, as shots of several of tonight's competitors scroll by, including the Steiners, the Four Horsemen, the Great Muta, Sting, Ric Flair, and Tatsumi Fujinami, before we cut to some nice shots of the exterior of the Tokyo Dome. Then the interior, where holy crap, that's a lot of people.
Yeah, yeah.
As noted before, this show has around 3 times as many people as the next largest non-North Korean single arena show that we've seen, and boy does it show. Host Jim Ross welcomes us to the show alongside co-host Tony Schiavone. Now that is an unusual team.
It is, yeah.
JR calls the show a monumental event, and Tony notes most of the matches they'll be showing will pit WCW stars against New Japan stars, particularly highlighting the final 2 matches, Sting versus the Great Muta, and the Nature Boy, Ric Flair, versus Tatsumi Dragon Fujinami. Ric Flair just has bad luck with guys with the Dragon nickname, doesn't he?
He really does, yeah.
JR throws to a short video package of WCW stars arriving at their hotel. Notably, Sting's idea of casual dress is his awesome Captain Stingmerica jacket, just with only partial face paint. It's just under one eye.
Yeah.
He still looks awesome. We also see Fujinami and Flair signing the contract for their title versus title match, as JR and Tony discuss the hybrid rules the match will be under. Titles will not change hands on a disqualification, which is a WCW rule, but countouts will be 20 counts, which is a New Japan rule. We cut to a very nice looking banquet, and why yes, Sting is still wearing his sparkly getup, why do you ask? Notable is the Mitsuroko symbol on a nice banner behind one server at one of the food stations. That's a symbol of the Hojo clan of Japan, composed of 3 triangles, that happens to be the likely inspiration for the Triforce from The Legend of Zelda, immediately making this the greatest WCW show that I have ever seen.
Well, there you go.
Every match on this show could be utter crap, and it would still be the one with the Triforce. We follow that with something almost as good, the Four Horsemen on a shopping trip in Japan, featuring Arn Anderson trying on Japanese clothing. I didn't know that I needed that in my life, but now I would pay to watch an entire show of the Four Horsemen touring Japan.
That would be pretty sweet, yeah.
Sadly, we only get a few seconds here and have to go watch excellent wrestling instead.
Yeah.
Back to JR and Tony, and JR gives us our title as he throws to our first match.
Fans, let's go to the ring in our first event from the Tokyo Dome.
And I'm going to apologize in advance if I get any of the names wrong on this show, because I have only seen some of these people on this one program. Our first match is Shiro Koshinaka, Kuniaki Kobayashi, and Takayuki Izuka versus Tim Horner, Brian Pillman, and the Z-Man in a 6-man tag match. The referee for this is Nick Patrick.
Kind of an interesting connection I found here. Koshinaka was the first man to fight the Great Muta, that is Keiji Muto under his gimmick where he has the crazy face paint and mist. So it's kind of interesting that historically. However, there's also another connection here. Mr. Kobayashi was the first man to fight Jushin Thunder Liger under his Thunder Liger gimmick.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. Like, statistically, there's so many Japanese wrestlers and so many matches that take place, but yet 2 people with notable first appearances end up on a 6-man tag match in the same team.
That's very interesting, yeah.
Yeah. I was like, oh, that's weird.
The music for the Japanese team's entrance is somewhat grating, I think.
Yeah.
Their shiny silver jackets are cool as heck, though.
That's true, yeah.
The Japanese ring announcer is in a robe, which definitely gives this a different feel.
Mm-hmm.
Tony notes that the WCW team all has experience wrestling against Japanese pro wrestlers. JR notes Kobayashi's extremely prominent sideburns, drawing a chuckle from Tony. JR notes that this is taking place under New Japan Pro Wrestling rules, meaning a countout at 20 and no disqualification for throwing someone over the top rope. On the ring, they've got a nice setup. They have both company logos, framing a big star on which is printed 91 Starrcade in Tokyo Dome. It took us a while to figure out what it actually said, though,
Yeah.
as the spacing is weird, so the 91 looks like it's extra letters on the front of Starrcade rather than a separate number.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just like a little bit too close.
Yeah, it's the spacing and how close, the proximity they are, yeah. They just really squish together, yeah.
Kobayashi versus Z-Man goes poorly for Z-Man, but Pillman and Horner trade off against Koshinaka, earning 2 with a Pillman spin kick and again with a cool one-arm scoop backdrop by Horner. Horner holds Koshinaka's arm for a Pillman top rope double axe handle, and if the AWA is any guide, Pillman should have pinned as he would have won for sure. Tags to Z-Man and Iizuka walks right into a Z-Man knee strike. Pillman, Z-Man, and Horner trade off beating poor Iizuka up, earning multiple 2 counts. Z-Man, of course, lands a dropkick off the top rope, once again proving himself a master evaluator of dropkick possibility, as Starrcade 1991's claimed.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
Nice double teams by the WCW team, but some surprisingly crappy Pillman kicks. They're a little wispy for parts of this match. Iizuka finally manages to fight back with some drop kicks to Pillman, but Pillman just spin kicks him in the head. That one was better.
It was, yeah. That was good.
Iizuka manages to double clothesline and double drop kick Pillman and Horner, and Koshinaka charges in to butt bump Z-Man. JR notes it's probably called something else in Japanese, which gets Tony laughing. Kobayashi tagged in for a bridging suplex for 1, as Pillman and Z-Man both save, but Koshinaka disposes of them, and Kobayashi tags Iizuka and holds Horner for an Iizuka top rope dropkick. Iizuka hits the dragon suplex to Horner for the 3 count and the win. Thoughts on this one?
I thought this was a pretty solid opener. There's no absolutely amazing moves here, and we're still not quite at the, I would say, mid to late 90s cruiserweight sort of status that we're going to get for solid match openers, both, in New Japan shows and for this one. That said, I did like the story they told. It's pretty simple, but effective, that the American faces, once they sort of can get control, they double team very well. They have all these double team moves in there. The Japanese team, is the underdogs here because they're playing to the hometown crowd. Like a classic face in peril, they're fighting from underneath, and ultimately they overcome the odds, not with some cool double team move like a heart attack or, doomsday device, but with a series of moves by the single wrestlers.
Mm-hmm.
So ultimately the skill and power of the singles wrestlers overcomes the disadvantage they're at by facing an actual team. I think it's maybe the first time we see Tim Horner on a show. It is nice to actually see him wrestle because he's quite good.
Yeah, I agree.
I can't think of here's this great Tim Horner movie you got to really see, but he's very, very reliable. He's very good in this match. He's a good, solid addition to it.
Mm-hmm.
It's also nice to see more Tom Zink as well, because he's kind of underrated because he never really got that high in the card, but all the matches we've seen him on, he's been quite good.
Yeah, I fondly remember, I believe it was him versus Pillman from Wrestle War series, wasn't it?
Yeah.
That we really, really liked.
Yes. They turned the sort of friendly rivalry into a serious one and everything in that match quite well.
Yeah, yeah.
In spite of a few of his kicks looking not so great, I thought Pillman did really well here as well. Obviously, commentary is really, really building him up. JR keeps calling him the hottest guy in the match, which sounds weird out of context, but I think I know what he means.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a good showcase for everyone involved. And nothing amazing. I don't know if this is necessarily a must-see match, but it was enjoyable and it set a nice pace for the opener, even if it was actually a second match.
Yeah.
It was our opener.
Yeah, as 6-man tag matches tend to be, this was an excellent showcase of what everyone could do. They took great advantage of having so many people to keep the match constantly moving, and everyone got their chance to show their stuff. Pillman, Z-Man, and Horner had a lot of good double team spots I particularly enjoyed, especially Pillman and Z-Man, which makes sense that they had spent time as a tag team, as we've documented in prior series.
Yeah, former U.S. tag champions, as they mentioned in commentary, yeah.
Izuka, the youngest of the Japanese team, got a lot of focus, though mostly as face in peril. He did get to showcase a few moves, but oddly, despite Tony and JR spending quite a lot of time talking up his sambo training and specialization in locks and holds, he didn't really get time to do those in the match.
Mm-hmm.
His closing dragon suplex looked awesome, though.
Yeah.
Great arc and bridge.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone came out of this looking great, and it gave us a fast-paced and fun opener, even if, as you said, it wasn't the opener of the actual Japanese show.
Yeah. Obviously, there would be lots of history with Pillman and New Japan in the future, specifically with him and Liger. They would battle over the WCW light heavyweight title, and in fact, they would later be the opening match on the very first WCW Monday Nitro.
That's right.
In 1995, yeah.
Yeah, that's cool.
Also worth noting that Izuka was the young partner in the match that we saw at Wrestle War in 1992 with Tatsumi Fujinami.
Oh, that was him!
Against the Steiners, where he got his unfortunately, this poor man got his face all brutalized, is the nicest way to put it.
Okay, I thought that name sounded familiar. I'd forgotten that was him.
Mm-hmm.
Poor guy on that one. That was a rough match for him. I remember that's the one where you and I both heavily compliment Fujinami and kind of holding the match together after it appears as Izuka potentially gets injured.
Yeah, it was some sort of double team move with the Steiners where they're supposed to be like landing elbow drop to the chest, I think, while one of them's holding him, but they clearly fall more on his face and upper chest than in the middle of his chest, and it just his nose is not well in that match.
Yeah, definitely.
And understandably dazed from having a Steiner fall on it. Fair play for getting through it, and again, fair play to Fujinami for keeping that match together as well, yeah.
We cut to Tony and JR, and JR praises the effort of all the competitors and builds up the IWGP Junior Heavyweight match. Tony absolutely butchers Jushin Thunder Liger's name.
Yeah.
It's going to be Jushin Thunder Liger.
At a certain point, you're amazed you got Thunder correctly.
I mean, in fairness to Tony, I'm sure that no one told him how to say it.
Yeah, you would hope they'd give him like a sheet of like, you know, like they have the match layout and like the show layout, and like especially with the Japanese names, have like the name written and then like
the phonetics.
Yeah, and the phonetics, exactly. Yeah, just put it next to it.
To that note, remember poor JR at Starrcade 1990 calling Rey Mysterio 3 or 4 different names because they keep telling him a different one.
It's true, yeah. He's like Rey Mysteric at one point, and like
Rey Mysteric, Rey Mysterioso. Those are 2 I remember for sure, yeah.
Those are the ones I remember as well, yeah.
Tony notes that Liger's opponent, Akira Nogami, had once been champion and has not wrestled in Japan since he lost the title. JR almost gives us her title again with Let's Go Back to the Ring.
That'll be the show we do in like 20 years where we rewatch our old episodes and talk over them, yeah. Because people would have listened to our show twice. Clearly.
The lighting is considerably different in these segments than when we're watching a match. I think it's just that the WCW version is so cut down so we don't see the lighting change between matches like we normally would.
Mm-hmm.
We just kind of smash cut to them.
Yeah.
But it makes it sometimes feel like they're recording these in post instead of live. I don't think that's the case.
No, I don't think they are, no.
It has an awkward feel.
Yeah, I'm curious to see how that would play out on the actual show. Obviously, the opening match isn't affected because they just aren't out there for it. But like, do they just like sit in silence or like discuss the rest of the show, you know, between themselves during the matches they don't cover? Like, yeah, don't worry, we're not filming this, so don't worry.
Yeah, I don't know. Or maybe I kind of wonder if they just had them do commentary for all the matches and just in case they ended up using, because they obviously are producing the WCW version afterwards. So they may have not yet decided which ones they were going to keep.
So you're saying there's a chance that there's the Vader Bigelow match with English commentary out there somewhere in a vault, maybe in like Stamford, Connecticut.
Yeah, that seems potentially possible.
Yeah, but can't argue with that.
Get to it, WWF Hidden Gems.
Yeah, right? I think that still exists.
Our second match is Jushin Thunder Liger versus Akira Nogami for Liger's IWGP Junior Heavyweight Championship. I was not able to identify the referee for this match. I couldn't find a point where they actually spoke his name.
Yeah, I didn't get to that either. Slight correction on the story they tell, and this is what they say. So, as far as I could tell, there is a match where Akira Nogami challenges Liger for the same title, but he's the challenger, not the champion.
Oh, okay.
So unless there's a match, I went through cage matches. It's pretty thorough listing for these. Like early 1990, and there's a match between him and Liger. And then there's a bunch of matches where he goes to the CWA, which is based in Austria. That was Otto Wanz's promotion over in Europe. He wrestles there, and then suddenly he has this one match back. So again, it might be people feeding the wrong details. I can't imagine JR is really following the story of Akira Nagami and Liger. And then sure, like, hey, it makes a better story if they say that, he lost the title and retreated into hiding, but that's not really what happened. But the whole a year away thing is a real thing.
Mm-hmm. So at the very least, it is still a title match.
Oh yes, yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
So they mix up challenger and champion, but okay.
Yeah, and it is of note that this is his sort of re-debut in New Japan, where he's now no longer Akira Nagami, he's just Akira in all caps.
Yes.
It's a very Japanese thing. There's a number of wrestlers that just wrestle as a single name in all caps. Currently, there's Kenta and Evil, just who I know of my passing knowledge of New Japan. So and there's more, I'm sure.
Again, Japan names.
Mm-hmm.
Akira comes out in his cool kabuki face paint and wig.
Mm-hmm.
Liger comes out in an awesome green and gold version of his outfit that looks very Green Power Ranger.
Yeah, I see that.
Nagami throws out long strands of something as he's introduced, but Liger just calmly holds up his belt. Liger lands rapid strikes and a spin wheel kick, and Nagami rolls out, only for Liger to hit a top rope flipping senton to the floor. JR calls it a complete 360, but it's more like 270.
Yeah.
Liger tries another dive, but Nagami drop kicks him out of the air, and both sell their legs. Back in, Nagami gets 2 with a victory roll and works the leg after Liger collapses trying a pile driver, but Liger counters a figure 4 with a roll up for 2, dodges a splash, and hits the Liger bomb for 2 before finishing Nagami with a top rope DDT for the 3 count and the win. Tony says Liger based that one on the Steiners. One note here, according to Wikipedia, this match went 16 minutes, so if that's the case, it's been considerably shortened here, as our version didn't even reach 10.
Yeah, that's interesting.
I couldn't spot where there might have been a cut.
Yeah.
But it feels like this might have been cut down.
Right. Well, we were discussing before we recorded that there's some time discrepancy if someone is counting, hey, here's where this match starts with entrances.
Yeah.
And then like some post-match stuff on matches. But that still, like you said to me, that still doesn't get you 16 minutes. That gets you like 10, 11, I think, maybe.
Yeah.
Because there's this long walkway really selling how big the egg dome is.
Yes.
There's definitely some cut in there, but yeah, it's not an obvious point. It's not like they're standing upright, then suddenly they're on the ground just selling some big, double down spot.
Mm-hmm. Thoughts on this one?
I thought this was a decent match, but again, maybe this is just our version we got, but it felt kind of short.
Yes.
Liger is definitely those guys that had stamina and had endurance for matches and could really go longer matches with really talented people. We've had him in Ray, we've had him in Conan. I often easy to forget because so much time has passed. There is briefly a Liger DDP interaction from the Starrcade 1991.
Right.
Same, there was no follow-up later with like more established like 97, 98 DDP against Liger. I'd really love to see that.
Oh my gosh, I'd love that, yeah.
Yeah. It's really a question about what happened in this match. If they cut noticeable time out of it, like why? Because the thing with the match is all the action is good, but there's definitely feels like it's not a normal Liger match. I don't know if there is a legit injury there or if it's just really good selling. Like they decided, hey, let's really sell leg injury and let's change our whole style based around that. If so, that'd be pretty impressive because tricked me into thinking that Liger legit, hurt his knee or ankle and had to power through a match. So if they tricked me, then more power to them. But I'm not sure on that one.
What makes me feel like it probably is selling is that he does go for, I think, like a pile driver at some point and collapse during it, which you could argue is proving that it's real. But I think my feeling is if he actually had a leg injury that he was dealing with, they would not go for something like a pile driver. That's too dangerous to be doing with a bum leg.
That's fair. Yeah, it's interesting. It just feels different because Liger could definitely do the high spot. He could do the cartwheels and the sentons. I believe we had him do moonsault or two on shows, but he was never fully the the main aerial guy. But that said, it's still weird seeing him work this real strong power style. And again, maybe it's think of cutting because he does his big power bomb, doesn't get the win, that's just another move and then gets the win. So if this is a blow off for some story that they built up for like a year, kind of in a weird way, like the Sting Hogan match, Starrcade 97, it doesn't feel like the big blow off or big climax of this story. So it's a good match because I mean Liger's involved and Nagami, for what I've seen of him, is really good, but it just feels different. Not necessarily in a good way, but it's not a bad match either.
Yeah, as we've noted, it's possible this was pretty heavily trimmed in the version that we got, but it still had good action. It's just very short to the extent of feeling abrupt. Nagami in particular, I think, is not well served by the short match. This is being built up as his big return match and a chance to prove that he has what it takes to take on Liger. But aside from the dropkick outside the ring and some leg stomps, all the notable offense here is Liger's.
Yeah.
It doesn't take away from the impressive acrobatics nor from Liger's magnificent power bombs, but while the moves and the outfits were entertaining, the story felt flat, and this came off as more like a squash match than a major feud.
Yeah.
It seems like a good solid performance that might have been hurt by some editing, but it was good to see Liger, and I'd be interested in seeing more of Nagami. He seems quite good.
Yeah. I definitely don't really like critiques of his performance. It's just the way the match plays out doesn't, like I said, doesn't really favor him for sure.
Yeah. I feel like we just don't get to see much of what he can do, but what we see of it is good.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's especially an odd feeling if, as you said, it's him kind of not only coming back, but basically like debuting a new gimmick. This is not the match that I would expect in that case. I would expect him to have several more minutes of him beating the crap out of Liger before Liger manages to get the win, if Liger's going to win the match. That's where it definitely feels like something was cut out of this.
Yeah. It definitely it's in a weird place because I think officially, if you don't count this show, Liger doesn't really come into a play in WCW until Starrcade 1991.
I think that was the first time we saw him anyway.
Yeah, for sure. So it's kind of a weird position because here we are in March when they recorded this, in April when they ran it, a good 7-8 months before he's really become a known commodity in the company. Even then, he's thrown into battle with 40 people, and he really impresses because he's Liger, but he wasn't thrown out there. Hey, here's this big Liger guy you really got to see.
Right.
He impresses because he's so talented. He's not presented as like a Sting or a Hulk Hogan like figure that you really need to see. So I'm wondering if, like I said, maybe they cut like parts where like they have a slower, more methodical, like leg based submission offense or like wear down offense, and they're like, yeah, just cut that. Wait for the flips,
Yeah.
I'd be curious to find an uncut version of this. Like maybe if there's the New Japan version, and maybe see what's different at some point.
Speaking of that Battle Bowl show, the guy facing him in that match, I believe, is Mike Graham, isn't it? Who was mentioned on last time's AWA show.
Yes.
Another cool little connection.
Yeah. It's amazing how many random things just happen like that.
Yeah.
With the way we cover shows and the odd order we cover them in, yeah. So here's where it gets a little weird. Less than a week or so, it's hard to find the exact date when this aired, because it's weird Wikipedia didn't have, like, it just says April 1991, doesn't have an actual date. You'd think it would, given that it ran a pay-per-view, but anyways. So on April 15th, Liger actually vacates the Junior Heavyweight Championship to put on the line in the top of the Super Junior tournament.
Ah, okay.
During that tournament, he would actually end up losing, so he loses his title that way to a man named Norio Hanaga. The title would be traded between the two of them as well as Akira over the next year or so. A little fact I picked up as well. Akira is still wrestling part-time today. He actually wrestled in Great Muta's retirement show in 2023, which Sting also showed up in.
Oh, okay.
The two people on this show, at least two people, there may be more that I missed, that being Akira and Sting, as well as obviously Muta himself, wrestling on Muta's final show 22 years after this one airs. Almost.
That's neat.
Yeah.
JR praises the performance, and he and Tony build up the next match, with Tony mentioning that Masahiro Chono was trained by Lou Thesz himself. So our third match is Masahiro Chono and Masa Saito versus the Four Horsemen, Arn Anderson and Barry Windham, And again, I was not able to identify this referee.
Notably, the Horsemen are coming off a big win at Wrestle War, which is a show we've recovered, so we'll go back and check that out. Wrestle War 1991. That's unfortunately the match that goes very poorly for Brian Pillman. Sid Vicious power bombs him.
Oh, good gosh, yeah.
Basically, we haven't seen it, and if you listen to the show, we'll cover it. I don't know who's to blame for this specifically, but Sid lifts Pillman up for his power bomb. The ceiling, because they're in the cage with the ceiling on it, is a little low. So as he's sort of pulling Pillman up and rotating him, his legs bump into the top of the cage as he's turning him over. So instead of turning him all the way over and then dropping him straight on his back like you're supposed to with the power bomb, he hits that and then drops him. Maybe you should have run through this on your...
Yeah, scene. Is it possible to do this move before we actually book it as part of the match? Yeah.
Given that it's a power bomb, and those are dangerous to do under the best circumstances. It's often forgotten because people really super cringe at that spot, and I do as well, thinking about it now even. It's important that the Horsemen do win there. It's a big thing for him. Masahiro is a guy we've seen once before. That is Starrcade 1995 as part of the big WCW versus New Japan show. It was him and Johnny B. Bad having a match as well. I came across this really weird fact about Masahiro. It doesn't really relate to the show, but I don't know how many other times they're going to cover Masahiro, and I kind of have to just share this now because it's so crazy. On June 12th, Saito faced Antonio Inoki in the finals of the IWGP League 1997 to determine the first ever IWGP Heavyweight Champion, which was won by Inoki. Of course, the guy booking the show and owning the company is world champion first. Kind of a given. No knock on Inoki, but it's hard to ignore. However, that of course would not be the end of the feud. Saito would not take that sitting down. To settle the feud, the two would compete in a island death match on October 4th, 1987. This is a real thing.
Nice.
One hand, I absolutely want to see this. Another time, it'd be hell to cover because they were placed on Genojima Island and wrestled a match that lasted 2 hours.
Wow.
And spread across the entire island, which was won by Inoki. So yeah, you want to track down and cover a 2-hour match between Inoki and Saito on an island?
I'm willing to watch and cover it. I am not willing to recap it.
That's fair enough. Yeah. I was like, wait, it's a shame that's not a pay-per-view because I wanted a chance to cover that, but also dread covering it.
Yeah.
We'd usually be covering that as the whole show, I imagine.
Pretty much.
If I could track down footage of that, even if we're not going to cover it, I will let you know, okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's an absolutely super Japanese thing. You guys get settled this, fine. Go on now and just fight each other until one of you loses.
Nice. The Horsemen come out to a theme that definitely feels like a ripoff of some famous song, but I couldn't quite place it. Wyndham has an epic mustache.
Mm-hmm.
JR credits Lou Thez with teaching Masahiro Chono his STF hold. Chono and Saito's music starts slow, but it gets pretty epic. As we get the intros, JR mentions the next pay-per-view will be in St. Petersburg, Florida. Woohoo!
Woohoo!
He calls Saito a Japanese version of Rick Steiner and credits him for the Saito suplex.
Mm-hmm.
Tony mentions that Chono actually got to wrestle Lou Thez, which happened in December 1990.
Mm-hmm.
As you referenced earlier, Al, this appears to have been Thez's final match. Thez was 74 years old at the time. That match is actually available on Dailymotion at the time of recording and is short but actually worth a look, especially if you want to see what an absolutely thrilled Masahiro Chono looks like.
I bet, yeah.
The dude cannot stop smiling at getting to have a match against a legend.
I can't blame him, honestly, yeah.
It's genuinely one of the most charming things I have ever seen in my life. The guy is just like helplessly grinning the entire time.
Yeah, I can bet.
Match is not bad either. I mean, Thez, you can tell, is not in his prime as a wrestler.
Sure.
But he manages a good match flow still, I think. And it's not like Bockwinkel and Funk on on one of the Slamborees.
Yes, 90. I think I want to say 93.
I think it was 93. Yeah. It's not played at like quarter speed like that. It's a reasonable pace to it and everything. It's short, but it's actually worth the look, I think.
I'm sure it's less depressing to watch than Ric Flair's last match.
Wyndham versus Chono to start, and Chono makes Wyndham pay for a cheap shot with some heavy strikes of his own. Saito and Anderson prove evenly matched. Back to Chono and Wyndham, and they really go at it, with Wyndham earning 2 with a belly-to-back suplex and slapping Chono hard in the face after escaping a head scissors hold, then DDTing him. Tag to Anderson, but Chono quickly Flair karmas him and goes for the STF, so Wyndham saves. The crowd boos, so Wyndham brilliantly, sarcastically poses like they're cheering.
Yeah, he's really good in this match for sure.
His reward for that is Chono dropkicking him in the face, diving out onto him when he rolls out, and stomping him flat.
That's karma very quickly, yeah.
Yes. Wyndham later comes back to save Anderson from another hold, again taunting the crowd. The Horsemen trade off against Chono, including Wyndham's beautiful float-over suplex for 2,
Mm-hmm.
and an Anderson abdominal stretch with leverage from Wyndham. But Chono makes the tag, and Saito charges in, only for Anderson to land multiple blows. Saito shakes it off and basically hulks up.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
Then beats Anderson up and hits Saito's suplexes to both Horsemen. But Wyndham charges in, drawing Chono in, which distracts the ref. Saito floats over an Anderson slam, but Wyndham suddenly just runs past, bounces off the ropes, and lariats Saito as Anderson ducks just in time.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely beautiful timing there.
Yeah.
Anderson pins Saito for the 3 count and the win. Chono brawls with Wyndham momentarily, but Anderson and Wyndham quickly escape as we cut to a quick view of the concession stand, and Tony and JR talk about them having sushi instead of hot dogs.
Mm-hmm.
Sudden total shift there.
A little bit, yeah.
Thoughts on this one?
I thought this was a quite good match. Everyone involved is quite good. Obviously, we haven't seen a lot of Saito, but I know from his history, he's been a long career in Japan. So I'm not surprised to see him do well. Chono's the same way. We haven't reached a point where Chono has gone like full Yakuza yet with his character. That happened like the mid to late 90s, part of the whole NWO Japan thing. So it's nice to see sort of straight-laced face Chono here.
Yes.
I'm so used to seeing the leather coat, sinister mustache version of him.
He does already have very furious strikes, though.
He does, yes. But yeah, so the match itself was quite good. I mean, I did really enjoy Saito's Hulk up spot.
Yes.
I think I joked when we were watching that he's mistering up. he's telling me with Mr. Saito. Not as intimidating sounding, but he is a very intimidating looking man.
Yes.
I wouldn't say he's small, but he's very squat, I'd say.
Stocky.
Yeah.
I think is the, yeah.
He has the build of a powerlifter, which I think he actually was.
Yeah.
He is involved in the infamous McDonald's story with Ken Patera. He's the one that is staying with Patera, and when the cops show up to arrest Patera, they decide, let's just fight the police. In our hotel room. It's really a case where you wish they had body cams back then.
Yes.
They come in and turn them on, and Ken Patera and Saito are just standing there, I would assume shirtless, get ready to fist fight you in the hotel. What I liked about the actual match is Wyndham and Anderson really played to the whole American tag wrestling formula, which obviously in America it's so common that it's a formula that is not quite as exciting, especially when you have shows with multiple tag matches, because some people are not good at mixing up the formula or diversifying at all.
Yes.
But on a show like this, where it's really the only match like that, because the other tag matches don't feel like this match, it stands out in kind of interesting way. It's a nice sort of cultural exchange that you come to Japan, do as much as you can of the classic Anderson formula. I did find it kind of funny too that they keep trying to do the hand behind the back for extra leverage in the abdominal stretch, but Chono, I think it's just him playing the character, but he does kind of mess with the spot in kayfabe because he keeps telling the ref to check. So every time they start to do it, they keep having to pull it away. Yeah, I don't think they actually get to do the trick hold thing for more than like a couple of seconds because the ref is constantly checking.
It's the rare actual smart referee that's looking for cheating.
Yeah. I wonder how to really love that fact that it doesn't work and they get tired of it and break the hold. At the same time, I kind of miss the ref being distracted. It's interesting, too, that they build up to Saito's hot tag, and he really does make the most of it. He gives, his finish to both the guys, but then as part of the distraction, and that great time, and they KO him there. It's not the finish you're expecting.
Yeah, it's interesting, too, with that spot. He's tagged in, he charges in, but he's almost immediately actually stopped.
Mm-hmm.
But then he does the Hulk up bit, so they kind of like swerve you twice on it.
That's true. Yeah.
Aha, they got him. Oh, he stopped. Oh, he's okay.
Yeah, it's true. I forgot that part. Yeah.
Well, as you are undoubtedly already aware, I am always up for an Arn Anderson tag match. This was, no surprise, pretty darn good. Both teams worked really hard to make it an intense confrontation, landing heavy strikes on each other and hitting some really big, heavy suplexes, and the Horsemen had some excellent tag team tactics, pretty much controlling the flow of the match with ease. As much as I love Arn, and I love Arn a lot,
Yeah.
the MVP of this one has to be Wyndham, who just has the best sarcastic interactions with the crowd when he repeatedly displeases them by interrupting Chono's submission holds. And he manages that ending spot with terrific timing and velocity. The speed he gets coming off the ropes for that is amazing.
Oh, yeah.
The whole group was really up for this one, making for an entertaining and surprisingly emotional match.
One of the things, just picturing this, like, and this is all kayfabe, obviously. So, Flair's in the back. He's got a big match later. Arn and Wyndham are, prepping because they're part of the same group. And Arn, gives this big speech to Flair. It's like, we've been teaming together at this point for like 3 or 4 years. We know each other in and out. You're picking up stuff from me. I'm picking up for you. Don't worry. I'm taking all the lesson I learned from you and carry them into this match. Immediately cut to Arn Anderson getting caught with the Flair karma spot. And Flair's like, really? That's all you got from me?
You learned the wrong lessons, Arn.
Yeah. I'm glad you watched my matches, but you also, I think you fell asleep during my matches because you missed the part where that always ended horribly for me.
Yeah.
I think it's kind of interesting as well is a lot of people in later wrestling know Wyndham for some of his weirder stints when he would go in and out of wrestling companies. If people kind of remember him in a weird way for his old stalker gimmick, which he had in the late 90s. And he has that full-on mustache for that. And then later when he's part of the new Blackjacks. So it's kind of a weird transitional period seeing with that same mustache he'd have in like 96. But here is 1991 and like full NWA / JCP mode. But also that he's just, this mustache looks pretty good. I'll remember this for later. Yeah, quite enjoyable. As I mentioned before, the only other appearance, as far as I could tell, in WCW of Masa Saito is, of course, Starrcade 1995, where he wrestled Johnny B. Bad. In 1992, Masahiro Chono would actually win the NWA Championship. I believe we have 2 matches we've covered of him so far where he's defending the belt. Maybe we won for sure.
I know we have at Starrcade 1992 him versus Muta.
Yes, correct. But it's interesting given the drama that would come about 2-3 months from now in 1991 involving the NWA Championship, the whole thing with Ric Flair and how his contract ends up, and I remember the belt that the NWA Championship ends up in Japan for a little while.
Our fourth match is Big Cat Hughes versus Elegante. The referee for this one is Bill Alfonso. So yeah, just to clarify, we didn't get Vader and Bam Bam Bigelow versus Doom, but we did get this. Apparently, I've been a very bad person.
Well, as long as we only get one El Gigante match in this series, we'll be okay.
I have bad news for you, Al.
Don't steal my hope away just yet.
Incidentally, at least according to Wikipedia, this match took place after the Steiners versus Hase and Sasaki, but we're going to get that match after this match on our version.
So, not necessarily to this match, but a factor I found kind of surprising. So, cagematch.net is a great resource for looking up matches, get exact times and everything. So, while skimming through El Gigante or El Gigante, as you were supposed to say it, his match listing, I noticed a name popping up a lot, specifically only on house shows, never on televised events. And that being Ric Flair.
Okay.
Apparently a common feature of the house shows building up to this show and then sometimes after that would be NWA World title matches, Ric Flair and El Gigante. I counted around a dozen of these.
Testing the broomstick theory.
Yeah. Seriously, there's at least a dozen matches of various house shows touring, across the country, to a weekend and stuff. I'm like, you keep going back to this match. What did Flair do to you? Like, it's like, is this maybe this is where negotiations started. Jim Herd families who wants to cut his hair and becomes Spartacus or some crap.
Yeah.
Maybe he's like, okay, fine. I can't fire you. Here's Elegante for every weekend for 3 months. Enjoy. That's the only explanation I can think of why this match happened, let alone once, but a dozen times at least.
Wow. Cat's music is another definite ripoff that I can't quite place.
Mm-hmm.
Elegante really, really has to duck to get through the entrance.
Oh, yeah.
He's very tall.
Mm-hmm.
He does get quite a good reaction from the crowd and gives some very high fives. I'm not a fan of him really, but it's hard to not feel good for him here. He just seems to be enjoying the reaction he's getting from the crowd.
Yeah.
Noting the robe worn by the Japanese announcer, Tony proposes getting WCW ring announcer Gary Capetta to wear that instead of a tux.
That would be really cool, honestly.
A cute spot as Alfonso is doing the pre-fight checks. Elegante holds up his hand and Alfonso presses his own against it to show the massive difference in size.
Yeah. That was pretty funny.
Elegante actually gives a woo to start. Hughes audibly swears after a slam, but yeah, I mean, loud on camera and everything.
Yeah.
Hughes breaks the eyes, but Elegante no-sells his blows, clubs him, and takes roughly 2/3 of eternity building to a suplex.
Yeah. I kind of enjoyed in the sense that this is like the big spot of the match.
Yes.
As sad as this is what they're building up to. So I can't necessarily fault them. They definitely do take forever.
Yeah. He is getting a reaction from the crowd, so I get it, but it wouldn't be so bad if he kept hitting Hughes or something like that, but poor Hughes has to stand there absolutely motionless while this guy is just repeatedly saying, hey, should I suplex him? And like eventually it starts to feel like, okay, he's definitely conscious by now.
Yeah.
Soon after, Elegante slaps on the claw for the 3 count and the win. Elegante blows a kiss to the crowd, and Tony says he'll be a worldwide sensation. JR agrees that they're lucky to have him wrestling for WCW. Thoughts on this one?
So this match is really just there for spectacle, nothing more. That said, it as a match for a live crowd, I was expecting to hate this a lot more than I did. I'm not going to pretend this is good. I'm not ever saying that. Don't get the wrong impression. But there's a few things they know Gigante can do. Some well, some he thinks he can do well and can't. So they build a very short, thankfully, match around that. And because the crowd is so into the idea of this big, strange looking man wrestling, it gets a big reaction. So it makes it more enjoyable than it is. It's like watching, for instance, a sketch comedy show, and you don't find the sketch funny, but the crowd is constantly laughing at it. You're like, okay, I can't be mad at this sketch because clearly it's working for somebody.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not that somebody, but hey, someone's enjoying this. It's definitely better than them wrestling a bad match in dead silence.
Yes, yeah.
By the way, I think the silence, we haven't really talked about that, and it comes up obviously in commentary a few times throughout the show. In general, the Japanese crowd is more of kind of like a movie audience in a lot of sense.
Yes.
They sit and watch it, and they'll react sometimes, like they did with Wyndham, and they will definitely react during a couple of tag matches we have later and the Ric Flair Fujinami match. But in general, they're more like sort of watching things and waiting for the big spot to happen rather than, boo, I hate this guy, or yay, I love this guy.
Yeah, there's not this constant hum of noise like you get on an American show.
Yeah.
Which has to feel weird for the performers if you're not used to that.
Yeah.
Because you're like, are we having an impact, or is this playing well or not? But but it's not that they're not enjoying the show. It's just a difference in how the crowd behaves. Like the crowd's all goes to the United Methodist Church.
There you go.
But yeah, it's just a different atmosphere and a different feel to it, that they're much quieter. There are definite moments on the show where you get a big reaction out of them for sure.
Oh, yeah. So I was going to say, I think that's what gets Big Cat in trouble, because I think he's used to the sort of general crowd noise, and he can get away with his blank moment without him picking up. But on this show, yeah, it's very audible. It's like he just said to the microphone.
Yeah. You definitely throughout the show hear what the wrestlers are doing in the ring much more than on other ones. It's at certain points it's like everyone is Luger selling.
It's true, yeah. In the last two matches, because they have people ringside, you get the ringside attendants or people with the other wrestlers sort of yelling to cheer them on and that kind of stuff as well. So it's just,
Mm-hmm.
By the way, you glossed over the best spot of the match, Bob.
Did I?
Yeah, the big boot off the ropes.
Oh god, that thing.
So
The weird hopping sidekick that I wasn't sure what exactly it was supposed to be.
yeah, so big, tall, sort of lanky wrestlers, they love doing big boots. You just run and you get your leg up as high as you can and boot a guy in the face. You get a good extension and make a loud sound. Like test wear leather pants so it would make a nice sort of snapping sound the material.
Yes.
When you'd stretch it. That's part of why that move sounds so good. That's what those are supposed to be. Elegante throws Cat off the ropes, gets his foot a foot or two off the ground, maybe.
It's really bad.
Around Big Cat's stomach?
Yeah.
Maybe lower chest somewhere.
I don't know if it's timing or if he just can't get the leg higher than that, but
yeah,
it's so bad.
It's the closest thing we've had to the infamous one-legged dropkick from Starrcade.
Yeah, the Eric Watts.
Yes, yeah.
Yes.
I don't love this match. It's not good. But if you're thinking, oh, this is going to be the worst thing I've ever seen, it's not the worst thing I've ever seen. It's definitely not anywhere near the best thing I've ever seen, but it's really the crowd and the sort of spectacle of it all, their reaction to it, that makes it passable at best.
Yeah. The best description I've got for it is this existed.
Fair.
It's nice to see Elegante having fun and enjoying the reaction that he's getting from the crowd, but there's absolutely nothing to this match.
No.
Gigante's suplex does look fine, at least. I will give him that.
Yeah.
But for me, cut this out and give me another couple minutes of Liger versus Nagami or the Four Horsemen shopping trip, and I'll be a lot happier.
Mm-hmm. So this will probably be on our worst of the series matches because we're a 3-show series, and at least based on this show, the matches are quite good. So it's really a steep curve. But as far as like when we gone through and here's the worst matches from a series, I'd say most ways of measuring it, I don't think long term this is of the worst matches I've ever seen. Just again, it's purely the crowd and how they sort of enjoy what's happening in front of them.
Yeah.
This in front of a regular American crowd, not the same thing.
Right, yeah. I will remind, and we'll remind again when we get to that point, that for the worst awards on that, we can choose up to 3.
That's true, yes.
So there is the option of choosing 0, actually.
That's fair, yeah. Believe it or not, things could be worse, and did become worse, at least as far as New Japan goes. In 1994, New Japan brought Gigante back, post WCW and post WWE, I believe.
Oh, Gal Giant Gonzalez.
Yeah, it's post Giant Gonzalez. I think he's just back to like as himself, which no, that's an improvement, but at least it's not a naked fursuit.
Yes.
They brought him back for a singles match against Nails.
Oh, Gal. Oh, the pain.
Yeah.
I literally got a headache immediately.
Yeah. There's a match between Nails and El Gigante, or whatever he's going by at that point.
A match between Elegante and one of the few men with the unenviable distinction of being in a bad Sting match.
Yeah. I would love to know who booked that and why.
Yeah, yeah.
Thankfully, that is not in our series, though, so we're not covering that.
Good. Do not look up that match for me.
Well, let me put it this way, Bob. This match was inducted on WrestleCrap.com, so...
Oh, wow. Okay.
You can read up on it if you want.
Our 5th match is the Steiner brothers, Rick and Scott, versus Hiroshi Hase and Kensuke Sasaki in a title versus title match for the Steiners WCW Tag Team Championship and Hase and Sasaki's IWGP Tag Team Championship. The referee for this one is Nick Patrick. Al, incidentally, we have actually seen these exact teams in a match against each other once before. Or rather, in the future. It's at 1995's Collision in Korea.
Oh, yeah.
Hopefully, Hase takes less scary-looking bumps this time. Protect your head, ma'am.
Oh, yeah, I remember that. No, now you say that, I remember that.
That was a very good match, but man, he was scaring me in that one.
Yeah. Hase and Sasaki won the title about 2 weeks before this show aired, so about a month before it ran in America. So on one hand, you're like, yay, we're the champions. On the other hand, you're like, oh, I got to fight the Steiners. That's the only way you can lose by winning in a weird sort of way.
Yeah.
Thinking of which, the Steiners' world tag title reign is notable for being one of the Freebirds, who have I love this story, they have a negative 6-day title reign with the belt. Basically, what happens is they pre-taped a bunch of their television shows to air later. So they retaped a match where the Fabulous Freebirds come out and lose the tag titles to the Steiners. That was recorded 6 days before they actually won a pay-per-view, which probably really confused the live crowd. Here's the tag champion. What? Oh, okay. Wait, what's going on now?
Yeah, that was a weird period of WCW where, yeah, you were just like handed a belt you hadn't won yet,
Yeah.
told to go out and lose that belt, and then, 6 days later you go and actually win the belt that you had already lost.
I like our odds.
Just like, oh my gosh, what the heck?
Also notable that the Steiners were the WCW United States Tag Champion when they won those belts, and they technically are here, although I don't think they actually have the belts physically with them here.
I don't believe so, and those belts are not on the line.
Correct.
At least from the commentary, it sounds like those are going to be given up.
Yes.
Just haven't been surrendered yet. So that's allowing the Steiners to potentially accomplish something rather neat.
Correct, yeah.
As the Steiners enter, JR notes that the Steiners, as you noted, the WCW World Tag Team Champs and US Tag Team Champs, pending a tournament to determine new champs, can make history by also becoming the IWGP Tag Champs here, a collection of titles no other team has attained at once.
Mm-hmm.
The first few notes of Hase and Sasaki's entrance theme had me thinking God Bless America was starting up.
Yeah, I could hear that.
Is that same note pattern?
It kind of is, yeah.
JR and Tony discuss the Frankensteiner and note that Hase and Sasaki will be working to avoid it. JR notes, if you are a fan of suplexes, this will be your match.
That's fair, yes.
Hase versus Scott to start. Hase repeatedly uses his speed to escape and counter Scott, and knocks him out of the ring with a very cool arcing spin kick and a clothesline.
Mm-hmm.
He considers a dive, but perhaps remembering Ric's failure to catch Rocco Rock at Starrcade 1990, thinks better of it.
It's a good move, man. Yeah.
Sasaki versus Ric next, and JR claims Sasaki uses a 360-degree power slam. Wouldn't that just be setting the guy back on his feet?
Yes, correct.
Sasaki does indeed have a very cool power slam, though, and a great clothesline that JR declares the Sasaki line. Nobody gets to destroy Rick Steiner like that, except Sasaki.
Oh, yeah.
I remember that from the Collision in Korea match as well, that he and he alone gets the right to destroy the Steiners.
Mm-hmm. That's fair, yeah.
Hase back in, and he impressively muscles Rick up, but Rick slips free and gets him into the Steiners' corner. Scott and Rick trade off wearing Hase down, and Scott gets agitated, shouting at the crowd as they cheer for Hase. Tony notes that this might be the first time that the Steiners have experienced a crowd cheering against them. They earn multiple 2 counts, including off of Scott's Steiner line and double underhook powerbomb, but Hase fights free, darn near rock-bottoming Scott, and tags Sasaki to an absolutely massive cheer.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
Sasaki dropkicks both Steiners and power slams Rick for 2, carries Rick around with ease and slams him, then suplexes Hase off the top rope onto Rick.
Yes.
Hase Northern Lights suplex for 2, stunning Hase as JR notes that nobody gets out of that one normally. Rapid exchanges with varied pairings, and they get a tad sloppy on a DDT.
Yeah.
Scott kind of falls sideways. I think he might have thought it was going to be a neckbreaker.
Yeah, the slight miscue, I think, between 2 of them, for sure.
Yeah. Rick is slower to attack Hase than Hase expected, so Hase sells surprise well before Rick is there to flare karma him.
Yeah.
Scott puts Sasaki on his shoulders for a Rick top rope bulldog, and then Scott hits the Frankensteiner for the 3 count and the win. JR says the Steiners have just made history with this win, owning 3 different tag titles at one time. It's a little unclear whether it's history because they own any 3 titles or because they own these 3 specific titles, but still. Tony notes that in Japan, you not only get the belts after a title win, but also winner's trophies. Indeed, the Steiners get 4 trophies.
Yeah.
A huge team trophy, 2 individual trophies, and then another huge team trophy, presumably because they won one belt and defended another. That is a lot of stuff to carry home.
Yeah, someone's like, which trophy should we get? Yes.
Yeah. It's a cool display, though.
It is, yeah.
I don't want to be them trying to do the baggage check at the airport on the way back.
No.
The Steiners go over and check on Sasaki and Hase shakes hands. Sasaki sells frustration for a bit longer, but finally shakes as well, and it's hugs all around to applause from the crowd. Thoughts on this one?
I thought this was a really strong, hard-hitting match. Obviously, that's kind of a given with the Steiners, but it's neat seeing them in this Japanese environment because they really don't have to hold back. And in fairness, the Japanese wrestlers they're fighting also do not hold back.
Oh, no, they do not.
Everyone just goes for it. It's one of those ones where I feel like if they didn't hit them hard, like full force on, like, let's say a kick to the chest, the Steiners would be annoyed at them. They'd be like, "Oh, I'm not good enough to kick harder than that." You know, that kind of mindset they have. But yeah, it's interesting seeing them really like sort of set free in this environment because it's one thing seeing them throw around jobber tag teams in WCW, but they really go for us in these throws in here as well. Credit to Hase and Sasaki; they are a really good tag team as well.
Yes,
it is definitely intriguing to see the "I'm going to superplex my own partner onto you" move. I'm kind of wondering if they have a match where that doesn't go right, where the guy just rolls out of the way. If you do that spot multiple times and you never have that result, I'd be very disappointed.
Yeah.
The other thing that's interesting, let's talk about the crowd. So yeah, the crowd is definitely not against the Steiners, but they're definitely for Hase and Sasaki.
They never really boo the Steiners. They clearly like them too.
Yeah.
But they are definitely heavily cheering slanted towards the Sasaki and Hase's team.
Yeah. It's a weird sort of glimpse of the future almost for a number of reasons. For one thing, it's the closest we get for quite a few years until we actually get heel Scott Steiner.
Yeah.
Like Big Papa Pump Scott Steiner. The other thing is it's kind of a weird glimpse in the future as far as the cool heel thing goes with like the NWO.
Yeah. It's also, I think, similar in dynamic to like Hogan Warrior at WrestleMania 6, where both of them are good guys, but the crowd kind of is like picking which one they want to cheer more.
Yeah.
The Steiners never really act like heels.
No.
But the crowd has just decided that, they're valuing the hometown boys, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. I have a logistical question for you based on this match as well. Okay, so there's a point in the match where Scott gets, is it Sasaki, I believe, up in the top rope and then drops him? Or is it Hase? Or I think it's Hase.
Can't recall.
Okay. Anyway, so he basically does what would be a second rope Samoan drop.
Oh, right. Yes, that bit.
But obviously, Scott Steiner is not Samoan. They're from Michigan, right? The Steiners? That's like their whole thing?
Yes, yeah.
So I was like, what do you call that? My best guess was the Michigander drop.
Yeah, that's a fair one. I mean, they are U of M guys, so it could be the Wolverine drop.
Oh.
Which sounds cool.
Yeah.
Or, I mean, keeping with the naming convention of everything else they do, it could just be the Steiner drop, which also actually kind of sounds cool.
Yeah. I guess that would be accurate. He is falling as well.
That's fair, yeah.
Yeah. It's always nice to see the younger version of Scott here because we get so much in their shows of the full-on Big Papa Pump Scott Steiner, who, for a number of reasons, just doesn't wrestle the same way as he does here. Whether it's going out to argue with people in the crowd for, let's say, half the match, or just not being able to do certain moves, whether it's from his back injuries or just normal wear and tear, which is just a thing that happens. So it's nice seeing a sort of hint at like future heel Scott Steiner, but still wrestling like early 90s, late 80s Scott Steiner.
Yeah.
Where he's still doing the Frankensteiner as well.
Yeah, if heel Scott Steiner were more like this Scott Steiner, where he just like still wrestling at a decent pace, but just occasionally pauses for just a moment to get agitated at the crowd. I would like heel Scott Steiner a lot more.
Oh yeah, totally. And like I said, there's never reason why he changed his style, but it's disappointing. But so it's nice to have these sort of time capsule moments showing a hint, at least, what could have been had the stars aligned properly.
Yes, yeah. Dang, this was good.
Mm-hmm.
This is the Steiners at the top of their game versus a team in Sasaki and Hase that can absolutely go at their pace and hit and suplex just as hard. They made me feel every single move in this match. Though I did appreciate that Hase at least appears to know to tuck his dang head more at this point in his career than in 1995.
Yeah.
Sasaki gets to throw around the Steiners like nobody else ever does, and have some terrific, devastating looking power slams. And Hase is just incredibly sympathetic and charismatic, while also showing off surprising strength for being the smallest guy in the match, and some great kicks and agility besides. Both teams really poured it on, and quick tags kept this match constantly changing up, keeping this exciting from start to finish. So a great match and a great achievement for the Steiners. I really loved it.
I seem to recall watching the sort of middle point here, the 95, 96 Steiners, where they would regularly do the move where the guy would jump for like a leapfrog and they just grab him out of midair and power slam him like Sasaki does.
Yeah, Sasaki does that to them.
Yeah, I'm wondering if that them going, "Ooh, this is a good move. We could do something like that."
Entirely possible, yeah.
Yeah, that's how a lot of wrestling works. You wrestle a guy, and you're like, "Oh, that works." People after they wrestle Flair a couple of times start doing chops, and you're like, "Where'd that come from?" I wonder. Plus, given their sort of amateur background and how so much of suplexing and power slamming is just pivoting and just throwing with your hips, that makes for sense they'd be really good at a move like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is quite good. As far as actual WCW goes, Super Brawl, the next show that they're promoting, would give us the very excellent, as I recall, tag team match of Sting and Lex Luger against the Steiners.
Oh my gosh, I remember that one. We haven't yet covered it for the show yet, but I'm so excited for when we do.
Mm-hmm. I have fond memories of that as well.
Yeah.
So here's where it gets a little weird. So the Steiners are WCW World Tag Champions, US Tag Champions, technically still, and the IWGP Tag Champions. So due to their very busy schedule, I think is the answer for this. They're not really in Japan that much as champions. So it's like sort of the Brock Lesnar thing. They'll come over for a big show and defend the titles. So looking through Cage Match, assuming, again, it's a pretty comprehensive list. And I tried to my best to get this right. It looks like there are technically 3 defenses of the tag championships total in their run, with a caveat on the third one. So in May, they have a rematch against Hase and Sasaki. That's in Japan, of course.
Okay.
And then at Clash of Champions 15, there's a IWGP tag title match where it's them against Hiroshi Hase and Masahiro Chono.
Oh, that sounds fun.
Mm-hmm. However, in America, Scott Steiner would fortunately be injured in June.
Oh.
That would unfortunately lead to a weird situation where they stripped the titles and Rick Steiner would team up with a different wrestler to try and sort of keep the thing going. But, you can't really replace Scott Steiner.
It's pretty hard.
Basically, again, this sort of peak version of Scott Steiner. The duo of Rick Steiner and Scott Norton. Again, nothing to knock on Norton, but that's a good replacement you're probably going to get, especially for Japan.
At least you got a Scott.
That's true. That's got a big burly Scott. That's all we need, right?
Yeah.
They would show up in New Japan in November of 1991 to lose the titles.
Okay.
So I was kind of hoping there'd be more to that, I guess. Like New Japan guys coming over on television or them coming to Japan. But 2 out of technically 3 matches is still pretty good.
Yeah.
And then again, the achievement of being technically triple champions, and they're even ignoring this third title, being dual tag champions in 2 different companies across the world is impressive nonetheless.
It shows the value that both companies saw in the Steiners.
Mm-hmm. That would be somewhat replicated much later in the late 2000s. The Dudley Boys in TNA would be TNA tag champions and IWGP tag champions briefly around 2007, 2008. So it's not an unheard of feat, but it's definitely not a common feat. And again, it's an impressive feat all the same.
And to be fair, I mean, the Dudley Boys also quite a storied tag team.
Oh, yeah.
That's the caliber of team that you have to be to accomplish that.
Oh, yeah, certainly, yeah. Yeah, not saying that's a knock on the Boys, obviously, no.
JR again congratulates the Steiners on their achievement, which this time again sounds like it's about the 3 specific titles they've earned rather than just the fact that they have all 3 at all. JR calls the next match, Sting versus the Great Muta, a grudge match. So our 6th match is the Great Muta versus Sting. The referee for this one is Tiger Hattori.
So as mentioned, there is a rivalry between Sting and Muta. Muta would come over to WCW about a year or so before this. He'd have a year-long run where he'd be undefeated. In fact, he'd win the TV title off of Sting. That's part of that rivalry. Sting would unfortunately fail to win the title back from him. Thus the undefeated part, obviously. As we've covered already, the undefeated streak would come to a very weird and abrupt sudden stop at Starrcade 89, where he'd lose to Ric Flair in about a minute, I believe, as that match goes.
It was it was like a minute 30 maybe, and a generous portion of that, as I recall, is like the extraneous people brawling at ringside.
Yeah. It basically like hit 2 moves, go for moonsault, miss, figure 4, tap out.
It's very, very strange the way that happens.
I mean, as you covered, they're not great at ending big, long stories in this company.
This is true.
Maybe should have been foreshadowing for how they'd handled the Sting Hogan situation.
And the Goldberg one. Yeah, that's fair.
The pattern developing here. But so he's following that. He does some really impressive things. He has, I believe, your favorite Luger match, probably still.
It's definitely right up there. The Great Muta kicks the crap out of Luger's leg for like 15 minutes match. Yes.
Yeah.
I'm still proud of my Luger selling supercut from that episode.
Oh, yeah. After that, he would mostly wrestle in Japan, although obviously WCW is coming to him now, so that works out.
Okay. Muta's sparkly outfit game is strong tonight, with a cool red and black outfit with ninja-style mask and a sword logo on the back.
Mm-hmm.
But Sting brings his Captain Sting America outfit, so game, set, and match to Sting there.
Yeah, no one out Spangly Sting. We've established this by now.
Good try, though, Muta.
Oh, yeah, sure.
JR notes that Muta is seeking revenge for a loss to Sting in America. JR notes that Sting is tremendously popular even here in Japan. And yes, that definitely appears to be borne out from the reaction he's getting.
Oh, yeah.
Muta removes the mask, revealing deep red face paint tonight, and sprays green mist. Fans throw streamers across the ring in honor of the match. It has to be tough to stay in character as an intimidating wrestler when you've got a brightly colored streamer hanging off of your head.
Mm-hmm.
But Muta manages it.
Yes.
He barely reacts. It's impressive.
Mm-hmm.
Tony points out wrestlers at ringside acting as seconds for each competitor, noting Chono for Muta and the Steiners and Pillman for Sting, among others.
Could be a coincidence, but it's part of this build-up to Sting win the title off of Flair in 1990, I believe. He would sort of form his own mini-faction to counteract the Four Horsemen.
Yes.
And I think that's most of these same guys. So it might be what they're going for.
Could be. Z-Man's out there at one point as well, I think. But yeah.
It could be happenstance, but there's a lot of the same people, like the Steiners and Pillman as part of that. So
yeah. Muta hits the handspring elbow right away, but Sting dodges the moonsault and no-sells a spin kick. Muta kicks the crap out of him. So he rolls out, so Muta dives onto him. Both guys are already stained red from Muta's face paint, so he sprays red mist in the air just to be sure it looks like a bloodbath.
Yeah.
Back in, Sting kicks a diving Muta out of the air and chucks him out of the ring, and JR points out that is not a DQ in Japan.
Mm-hmm.
Sting dives out onto Muta. Sting works around a front face lock, taking breaks for a monkey flip, one-handed bulldog, and barricade drop, and goes for the scorpion deathlock, but Muta gets the ropes just as he locks it in, forcing a break. Muta takes over with a devastating spin kick, and gets 2 with the power drive elbow, yes please.
Mm-hmm. I love that elbow spot.
Oh, it's so great. They dodge each other's big corner moves, and Sting gets his knees up on the moonsault, and I swear that Muta took that right on the chin.
Mm-hmm.
It looks painful as heck.
Yeah.
Sting sells the arm, and it gives out on a press for 2 for Muta. More 2 counts with the Sting belly-to-back superplex, Sting backslide and Muta inside cradle, and Sting locks in the Scorpion Deathlock, but Muta crawls to the ropes to force the break. Stinger splash attempt, but Muta sprays green mist into a midair Sting and dodges so that Sting eats turnbuckle. Blinded, Sting is easy prey for a Muta top rope crossbody for the 3 count and the win. As Muta celebrates, the WCW wrestlers come in to check on Sting. Sting gets up and hurls Muta to the corner, hits the Stinger splash, and locks on the Scorpion Deathlock. All the other wrestlers at ringside get in, variously working to pry Sting off of Muta and pushing each other back. Thoughts on this one?
I thought this was a very good match. Again, this is Sting and Muta, so when you get these pairings, unless something really catastrophic happens, or just, they just have like 150-degree fevers, which will kill you, it's gonna be good. The odds are just 100% in that favor of that happening.
They'd be fine, Al. The face paint is a cooling agent.
Oh, okay.
Breaks a fever immediately.
It's like Vicks Vapor Rub, but just in your face?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, okay. I always wondered why he wore that all the time.
That's why he had the little bit of face paint on when they show him arriving early on. It was actually for motion sickness for the flight.
Oh, okay.
It's a wonder drug.
Wow, okay. I have to look into that.
Please do not take that as medical advice, people.
No, obviously. This is a really good match showing their sort of rivalry, because they sort of do the, hey, let's do the big spot, tease it, but not have that as a finish, which you really can only do when you've had 3 or 4 big matches
Yeah.
on a stage like this. They also show real familiarity with each other, which leads to interesting bits where they try different moves, like Sting to that weird top rope elbow, which I'm not sure how much it would have helped him even if he'd landed. He would have landed flat on his back, but also hit Muta with his elbow, so I don't know if he really would have won that scenario to begin with, but...
Yeah, it almost looks more like a senton than an elbow, but I mean, he's clearly going for an elbow drop, but it has that kind of motion to it.
Yeah. I think it's like talked before, where there's a case of how you want to take a bump, so you sort of adjust the move for that.
Yeah.
So you get him a situation like that where, yeah, he's basically taking a flat back bump while supposedly trying to do an elbow, which doesn't quite work, but it's fine. But yeah, I really like the counter sequences and the fact that Muta knows that the Scorpion Deathlock is bad. The second Sting tries to put it on, he's constantly struggling. So Sting really puts like the most work, other than a guy like Flair maybe, of trying to put that hold onto him.
It's some amazing conflict, yeah.
So Muta's like, his legs are tied around Sting's big, meaty thigh, constantly sort of twisting side to side in opposite directions, because Sting's got to turn him one way. And so you don't want to turn with him, because that's going to help him. So you just constantly keep him off balance. You don't know which way to turn.
Mm-hmm.
So he manages to hold off the hold long enough to get near the ropes. And then later again, when he puts it on, again, he really fights off the hold as much as he can, showing that, hey, I know this is coming. I know it's gonna beat me if I let him put it on me.
It simultaneously makes Muta look good because he's a canny fighter and he knows how to fight off the hold.
Yeah.
But it also emphasizes just how powerful and dangerous that hold is.
Mm-hmm. Oh, for sure.
That is like, oh, wow, he's desperate.
Yeah, it's always a good sign of a hold that second, like a face or heel goes for it, the other person desperately tries to get away, because they're like, if this hold is on me, I'm probably going to lose.
Yeah. We see that again in the final match, actually. We'll point out, I'm sure.
Yeah. It's also interesting, too, because you see this match, they do an arm work on Sting, as opposed to, obviously, leg work, which is Flair's whole thing, and we'll see the next match. So it's interesting kind of seeing slight variations of, like, Sting Flair spots with Muta.
Yeah.
I know at least 1 or 2 matches they do the Sting gets mad, goes for a press slam, but his leg gives out spot.
Mm-hmm.
So seeing the arm version of that, which gives you the same results, but with a slight tweak, is kind of nice to see.
Yeah, it was very nice.
The only thing I don't get with this match is the finish. Is spraying the mist in the guy's face while he's jumping at you not a disqualification?
That is the eternal question with the mist, isn't it?
Yeah.
I was just thinking, like, you had the red mist earlier. If you'd used that one for it, I could honestly get it, because there's so much of like Muta's red face paint rubbed off onto them that you could have easily bought the ref just not noticing
Mm-hmm.
the remnants of the mist on Sting,
Yeah.
because he just would think of it as the red face paint. But because it's the green one, it stands out. It's extremely obvious what happened, even if the ref didn't see it. And I honestly don't recall them like distracting the ref by any stretch of the imagination either. So
No, yeah, the ref is just watching full on.
is that just part of Muta's body now? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, obviously his body doesn't really create green mist he spits out. He's not some sort of lizard or snake. So you can't go, oh, it's just a natural thing he does. Yeah, it's weird because I feel like that would normally be, hey, let's distract the referee, use the mist to get advantage, and you put him in a front chancery or something where you'd hide the face.
Right.
But yeah, this is full on just using the mist to get a counter. And the ref sees the whole thing and is like, huh, interesting.
It's a cool spot.
It is.
And it goes well. It's just it's a very weird thing that's not a disqualification. Yeah.
Yeah. Obviously, if you've heard me talk about wrestling matches, I really hate sudden abrupt disqualification finishes. So, I'm not really asking for that. But at the same time, I'm just not sure how this makes any sense.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe the mist is legal in Japan. Maybe that's the New Japan rule.
Yeah, maybe. I'm torn because I if that had been the finish was, oh, boom, DQ, I thought, oh, that sucks.
Mm-hmm.
But the way it plays out, I'm like, wait, huh? I'm confused. I'm not mad. I'm just confused.
Yeah. Yeah, no surprise that this was good, though it's a bit oddly constructed to me. There's not a ton of variety to what they do, with a lot of repeated spots, but in place of variety, they added oomph.
Mm-hmm.
Every spot is performed as big and powerful as they possibly can. Muta's kicks look absolutely vicious. Sting muscles him around and hurls him with gusto.
Yeah.
And they both execute huge dives and sell like mad for each other.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't mind the less variety because it just felt right. These guys are pulling out their biggest guns, aware that nothing but their best will do against their opponent.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, like you, I'm pretty torn on the ending. I love the spot, but I just do not get why it's not a DQ. But yeah, great timing and execution for that and the entire match. And these two are always so much fun. I always love a Sting versus Muta match.
Mm-hmm. So I was a little surprised by doing this research. So you would think, based on this finish, oh, we're building up to another Muta Sting match. Like, let's say Super Brawl, which is the next pay-per-view, where, slight spoiler, I guess, there's cross-promotional stuff still happening. No. That's not what's happening.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's weird. This, oh, he cheated outright to win, and Sting is really off. That's why he attacks him post-match.
Especially with the promo he cuts later, too, yeah.
Yeah. So, again, going through Cage Match, which, again, is pretty good about having all sorts of matches on it. I was able to find the next time Muta and Sting interact, there is a tag match with Stan Hansen on Muta's team and PN News, seeing Spot who sticks out of this match, at a house show in June of 1991. And then the next time Sting and Muta cross paths, they are actually partners of September in New Japan shows.
Interesting.
Yeah, I was really thinking, oh, here's another big sort of blood feud with Sting and Muta, but not that I could find. I was very surprised by that.
That's very strange, yeah.
It doesn't take away from this match at all, but it's just I was really thinking they were building up something else. Maybe there's a story behind that, I don't know, but yeah, it's just weird that their next interaction is at a non-televised house show in a tag match, and then I guess they're cool by September. Yeah, that's very strange.
I mean, if anyone would get talked into teaming with someone who he had a blood feud against, it would be Sting.
Yes. Muta would have his big send-off pay-per-view in 2023, and he'd invite Sting there and Darby Allin tag with them as well.
That's very neat.
Yeah. It's always interesting seeing guys, again, like Akira Nagami wrestling a 1991 show, and here they're again wrestling in 2023.
It's quite a distance.
Yeah, absolutely.
Back to JR and Tony, and JR says that they will hope to hear from Sting later. He'll probably want a rematch, they note.
Mm-hmm.
Which, yeah, you would think so.
You would, yeah.
JR turns to the final match and notes that it could make history. Tony builds up the title versus title nature of the match. So our final match is Tatsumi Dragon Fujinami versus the Nature Boy Ric Flair for Flair's NWA World Heavyweight Championship and Fujinami's IWGP Heavyweight Championship. The referee is Bill Alfonso. Now, From what I understand, there's a lot of complexity to how this was announced to the varying audiences.
Yes.
So for the live crowd, it was apparently only announced as being for Flair's title, and specifically only for Flair's NWA title, not the WCW title, even though at the time those were one and the same in the United States.
Correct, yes.
This is in contrast to how Tony and JR presented, where this is title versus title.
Mm-hmm.
So as we're watching the WCW version, we will use WCW's telling.
Mm-hmm. So Fujinami at this point is a 4-time IWGP champion, having just won the title from Vader back on March 4th. So he has very recently returned as champion. Notably, Fujinami was also the first man to win the IWGP title after Antonio Inoki, who, in sort of disappointing fashion, breaks his foot and relinquishes the title.
Aw.
Yeah, obviously he has a lot more history with that belt, but it's like, that's kind of weird that disappointing, unfortunately, that the first title reign kind of ends that way. But it went to Fujinami, and a lot of good happened with it later, so. This is, of course, Flair's 7th run for the title, officially, if you don't count the weird one-off matches like how he lost the title to Harley Race like 2 weeks after winning at a Starrcade 83 that they just don't talk about.
Yeah.
And then won it back between shows. Going back to a recurring bit in the first run of our shows, Flair, of course, would win the title at a house show in January. So call back to the January curse. Although in this case, it's actually in favor of the person in the match.
It's a January blessing.
There you go.
I guess it's a January curse for his opponent, though.
That's true, yeah. I guess every blessing has a curse some sort of way.
Wow, that's depressing.
Well, every curse is a blessing, too, so.
Okay, sure.
It evens out?
Fujinami unfortunately gets the kind of annoying music used for the opening 6-man tag match, but his robe more than makes up for it with an awesome dragon on the back.
Oh, yeah.
He comes out following the Japanese flag, and JR builds up his sincerity and honor. JR says, "This is the match Fujinami has prepared for his entire career." Flair, for his part, has some amazing Gladiator movie-sounding music rather than his normal Also Sprach Zarathustra.
Mm-hmm.
He comes out following a lady carrying the US flag. Sadly, he has only opted for his admittedly nice black and silver robe rather than pulling a Sting and getting a red, white, and blue one.
Yeah.
JR notes that both of them have dominated the 80s in their respective countries, and Tony says Flair has noted this may be the largest crowd he's ever wrestled before. JR notes that Flair said he was going to try to get Fujinami to expend too much energy and exhaust himself. As before, we've got other wrestlers as seconds at ringside. Notably, I don't think there's any WCW guys out there, perhaps because of Flair's heel status, but still you'd think that Arn and Barry would be there, but I didn't see them.
Yeah, I was surprised by that as well.
Yeah.
I know Chono's out there, because Chono's yelling a lot during the match.
Yeah. We get the national anthems of both countries, and Flair looks intense, and Fujinami looks intense.
Mm-hmm.
It's a nice presentation of the whole thing, a big upgrade from some of the early Starrcades, as I recall.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
There's a massive amount of formality to this build-up to the match and the ring intros, which serves to make this feel epic. JR notes again that the match will use a 20 count for countouts like in Japan, but notes that throwing someone over the top rope is a disqualification, like in America. One last cool note, Alfonso has 2 logos on his shirt, styled after the Japanese and American flags, reflecting that he's effectively the referee for both organizations right now.
Very cool. Yeah, I think they mentioned that he's refereed in Japan before, so it's not like he's a complete outsider working for WCW.
Flair woos at Fujinami, getting in his face. They work around headlocks, but Fujinami suddenly locks on the Dragon Sleeper, his finisher, and Flair sells like absolute mad, and desperately manages to reach the ropes to force the break. Flair made Fujinami look like $1 million there.
Absolutely, yeah.
Fujinami wins a chop fest, and Flair retreats outside. Fujinami clearly thinks about a dive, but reconsiders. They work around headlocks, hip tosses, and chops. A lot of the mat is stained red, and there were no matches cut between Muta versus Sting and this. So was Muta's face paint seriously that runny?
Yeah, I guess so.
He really needs to talk to Sting about better face paint.
Mm-hmm.
Flair chops Fujinami so hard that the noise stops JR mid-sentence.
Yes.
Flair works the knee with kicks, rope drops, and a shin breaker. Flair knee drop, but the camera angle so clearly shows a miss that JR quickly covers by claiming that Fujinami dodged.
He dodged so quickly and so fast that he looked like he was standing still. It's amazing.
Fujinami suddenly locks on the Scorpion Deathlock.
Yeah.
JR notes that Flair is quite familiar with what that hold feels like.
Yes. Yes, he is.
Flair howls in pain and crawls for the ropes, but Fujinami switches to multiple other holds in succession until Flair manages to throw him to the mat to escape. Flair goes up top, but actually avoids Flair Karma by dropping to the apron, and repeatedly snaps Fujinami's neck across the ropes.
Yeah, the first one didn't look great, though.
Yeah, true. Flair gets multiple 2 counts, including a butterfly suplex and stalling vertical suplex, and JR does an excellent job of explaining the damage that Flair's chops do, weakening the pectoral muscles and even affecting breathing. It's a great little bit of move storyline there.
Yeah. I don't know if that's actually true, at least the breathing part, but
Probably not, but you know.
imagine. It sounds great.
It's a great like explanation of like why wrestlers can sometimes no sell them, but then they like start to get worn down by them too.
Yeah, it's fair.
Flair up top again, but this time Flair Karma is in full effect. Fujinami sends him to the corner for a Flair flip and drop kicks him off of the apron before beating the ever-loving crap out of him outside, getting Flair bleeding and continuing the beating inside with some excellent lunging punches. Flair catches a kick to try the figure 4, but Fujinami counters with an enziguri for 2 and earns several more with a nice clothesline, a roll-up, and a belly-to-back suplex in between brawling in and out of the ring. Nice touch on that figure 4 bit. Flair, I think you can hear just starting to do the thing he'll do sometimes where he yells like, "Now we go to school." He gets out now and then gets kicked in the head. Flair charges, but Fujinami ducks and Flair nails Alfonso, who goes full ragdoll and even spills off the apron.
Yeah.
Great referee selling there. Fujinami repeatedly pins Flair, but there's no ref, and he ends up countering a charge by throwing Flair out over the top rope. A dazed Alfonso appears to have seen it, but after a Fujinami suplex and a roll-up, it's replacement ref Tiger Hattori who lunges in to count the 3 count and the win. Chono comes in and gives Fujinami a hug as Fujinami realizes that he's at last won. Fujinami celebrates with the big gold belt as Tony notes that Flair is arguing with Alfonso. One of the Japanese wrestlers, I didn't catch which one, carries Fujinami around on his shoulders as Fujinami holds up both title belts. Fujinami is presented with trophies and he gets the big gold belt strapped on. I think that it's Izuka who gets to put it on him.
Okay.
Tony notes that JR is headed backstage to try to learn more. Thoughts on this one?
So this really is the story of this show, right? You go, hey, let's put really talented people in the ring, and then shockingly, the matches are really good.
Yes.
Who would have thought? Other than a few minor miscues, which I think might be just a general timing thing and maybe slight language barrier aspect, that's a really strong Flair performance. He doesn't have like a Sting who they have that rapport with. So he basically builds this really quick story where he's the overconfident heel and then Fujinami's the strong face, basically copy pasting in all the best ways his feud with another dragon, of course, which is Ricky Steamboat.
I also noted the similarities, yeah.
I mean, if you're going to copy a match, that's the one to do. So I have no complaints about that. There's really not too much to complain about quality of match-wise. Like the very first time he does the neck snap of the rope, he doesn't really seem to drop Fujinami down with him. He kind of just like taps his head and does a full back bump on the ring apron himself, and then is like, "Oh, okay, guess that worked."
Yeah.
It's also a rare time when Flair does the obvious blade spot, and even though you'd know once he's like, "Oh, he's outside," and his head being bounced off the outside ring barrier, he's got a blade. He hides it pretty well. At least the camera work hides his blading pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
I do, like you mentioned, his first time he does a knee drop, he blatantly misses Fujinami, so JR to his credit covers for it. So later in the match, when they do that spot again, it's against the other camera.
Yes.
You can cover that much better.
Yeah. Because obviously you don't want to land full on the guy's forehead with your knee.
No.
The point of that is to miss by as low amount as you can.
Yeah, a grazing strike, but look like you just knee dropped him directly. Yeah, of course.
But the camera angle is such that time that it becomes very obvious.
Yeah. That said, the match is really good. I feel for Fujinami's chest.
Yes.
My note was RIP Fujinami's chest, by the way.
Yes. It is fun early in the match. I forget if it's JR or Tony, but one of them says, now pay attention to Fujinami's chest over the course of this match because you'll see the impact of Flair's repeated chops. And yes, you do.
Yeah. If you're more of a Mon Wrestling fan, the best equivalent we have is Gunther. His chops, he can really build up the wear and tear in your body. Like, especially poor Sheamus, because of, his ginger complexion. If you look at any footage or pictures of him post Gunther match, he's at 3, I believe now. It's the horror show. That poor guy. I really do feel for him. So Fujinami's a guy we haven't seen a whole lot of. As mentioned, we got him on Wrestle War 92. So not having seen a lot of him, but knowing my reputation, he's in WWE Hall of Fame. So I expect a lot from him. He definitely delivers here. He's very good.
Oh, yeah.
Again, even if he's not going to be a Sting and do the woos of the crowd or cut a promo like a American wrestler would for us, the American audience, you really get behind him as a non-Japanese fan. How about before the crowd being like silent, sometimes stoic observers through certain matches until big spots, or if they get really annoyed, like with Barry Windham. So seeing the reaction he gets is really impressive.
Yes.
They are really behind him. To be fair, Flair does a really good job of making himself despicable, as he always does. So it's a really two-man effort, but we spent so many episodes rightfully praising Flair. It's nice to give some credit to the guys facing the ring as well.
Yeah, and Fujinami does an excellent job of playing off of Flair's character.
Yeah.
When Flair is doing the repeated neck snaps, he's stopping Fujinami from getting back in the ring by doing those. And Fujinami does an amazing job of just looking more and more agitated and frustrated.
Yeah.
Shouting outside and just like really visibly angry. It's an excellent performance.
Absolutely, yeah. I'll just say this because we'll cover it more later. The finish there was a choice. Let's put it that way.
This was really good. A fierce battle between two champions presented with the level of impact and intensity that it deserves. I really, really like Fujinami. He is very Steamboat-esque in his attitude and characterization, particularly in how he traded blows with Flair, as we've noted is appropriate for someone who shares the nickname The Dragon.
Yeah.
He has some terrific clotheslines, too. He does this little stumble after them that really sells the force that he puts into them.
Yeah, he throws his whole body at them, and he has to recover from how much he threw himself forward, yeah.
Yeah, I really love that. Flair did a great job riling up the crowd, and I like the special variants on some of his usual spots that we got to see here, like avoiding Flair karma by going to the apron, or doing the Flair flip but ending up hanging upside down.
Yeah.
It felt a little weird that we never actually got the figure 4 after the legwork that Flair did, though fair enough, he did go for it.
Yeah.
And Fujinami, I will say, honestly doesn't do much selling of said legwork, but he makes up for it with his own excellent holds. And overall, the match came together as a great contest that did repeat a few elements over its long run, but did different things with them to keep the match evolving.
Yeah.
The ending, I think, comes off fine on the show itself. In particular, there's great timing on the ref bump, great selling from Alfonso, and a cool final roll-up by Fujinami. Admittedly, though, it is very clear that WCW is going to be overturning this finish if you've seen any WCW booking at all. But on the show itself, it is fine.
See Starrcade 85, yeah.
Yeah. It's a really enjoyable and exciting main event.
To be clear, I don't think the finish takes away from the match that much. I know it's a new but advanced with the storyline. For me, I think the issue is I know how the Japanese audience is going to react to it.
Yeah.
It's disappointing in the sense that they give a really good show to the Japanese audience. They really deliver for this, 50 to 65,000, how many people were here, crowd, and for a pay-per-view audience across the world. So it's a shame that the last thing they stick them with is something that they're really not used to. It's called what's famously known for the dusty finish.
Yes.
Again, the match is really great. It's just disappointing that in a way that they did that.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, again, I think if you can ignore the fact that according to the stated rules of the match, so this is a big thing to ignore, but if you can ignore the fact that that is stated to be a spot that should be a disqualification, and you can stop yourself from looking forward to what that will probably mean for the storyline, the spot comes off fine, and the performance from everyone involved in it is great.
Yeah.
It is funny that we 2 shows in a row have discussed basically this exact spot.
Yeah, we got a AWA show in 1983, and then a New Japan WCW show in 1991. Yeah.
But yeah, I think in both cases, the way the ending plays out as a match is fine. It's the storyline after the match that is going to be more questionable.
I will say too, this is more of a thing for the whole show. There's a recurring thing where they talk about the rules, how they're different in New Japan, like the 20 count, and
Yes.
at times there's this sort of, I don't know, they're not mad, but there's a certain level of passive aggressiveness, I think, at least with the way JR talks about it. Like when he talks about how, over the top rope, not disqualification, he seems like he's sort of annoyed them that they don't have that rule like we do.
Yes.
But fair or not, that's how it comes off as. Like they don't believe in that thing, I guess.
And he gets agitated after Flair goes over the top rope in this match. He's like, now, wait a second, that's supposed to be a disqualification. He really starts howling about it, which obviously is going to be kind of a storyline setup, I think.
Yeah.
It's definitely interesting, especially from JR.
Yeah.
Normally, the very straightforward play-by-play announcer, hearing him do that kind of setup is interesting.
Yeah, I think it goes to we talked about before. Is interesting dynamic of this show is that there's not the color guy and the straight commentator.
Right.
Like there's not a heel commentator for the show, basically.
Right.
So maybe in a way that's kind of what he's sort of positioned himself to be, at least for the angle itself.
Yeah, I think Tony Moore takes on a color commentary role for earlier parts of the show, but definitely feels like JR is doing it there. Yeah.
Yeah. As mentioned, the quote-unquote dusty finish was not well received by the Japanese audience. More so people talking about it afterwards, like in the press and, discussing. It's less of like, oh, the crowd is really upset. I think the live crowd, other than unless they see what we're going to cover, they don't really get the idea that, oh, this is done to screw with us. Let's call it what it is. It's not like, again, going back to the Hogan Bockwinkel match where the crowd is super annoyed when they announce a reversal on that same show.
Right.
Feel like they're about to riot in defense of Hogan. This, of course, is all set up for a Super Brawl rematch between the two. And as you talked about the differences with that, WCW officially counts this as a disqualification victory for Flair. So when Fujinami comes over for Super Brawl, they announce it as Flair defending the title again against Fujinami. Whereas the Japanese press, who doesn't like that bollocks with the top rope disqualification thing, just basically treats it as Fujinami's going there to defend the WCW title against Flair.
The NWA one.
Oh, sorry, yes, the NWA title. It's confusing because there's 2 belts that list simultaneously like that.
Yes, yeah. Which are 9 times out of 10, or actually 99.999 times out of 100.
Yeah.
Are the same thing, but then they suddenly decide, oh, in this one instance, they're not.
Exactly, yeah.
It's very weird.
Another little stat I picked up I found it interesting. So Fujinami would have a total of 4 reigns with the belt. His last reign would come in 1998. His total time with the belt is 785 days.
Okay.
So that's over 2 years. Just over 2 years.
This is the IWGP one?
IWGP, correct, yes.
Okay, yeah.
So the one he's not defending, but maybe defending on this show. It's unclear.
Backstage, JR waits for a press conference and notes that he's sure that Alfonso saw the throw over the top rope. He throws to a video of the finish to Muta versus Sting with some comments from Sting.
I told everybody in Japan, everybody in Tokyo, I wanted to come here because of the great competition against the Great Muta. Great competition in the United States, first time here. I never expected something like this. This is not what great competition is all about. I don't care where it is, the United States or Japan, Muta. I want to get you back.
A good quick promo from a very, very green-faced Sting.
Yeah.
It makes him look badly beaten up, and the remnants of red face paint around one eye make it look swollen shut.
I can see that, yeah.
It definitely helps highlight his anger.
For sure, yeah.
I would definitely be up for more Muta versus Sting, so it was good to see this setup, even if it, as you said earlier, doesn't necessarily go anywhere for a bit.
Yeah.
We cut back to the press conference where JR just literally stands off to the side talking while Fujinami is giving his speech in the background, which feels like it would be a tad distracting for everybody there.
Yeah.
Notably, everybody Fujinami is speaking to is wearing a silvery 91 Starrcade in Tokyo Dome jacket, which makes it at least seem like he's just speaking to show staff rather than to reporters or anything.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe put the guys in suits?
Yeah, right?
JR notes, again, that Flair was thrown over the top rope and that Alfonso didn't count the pin. JR seems about to say that WCW believes Flair should still be the champ, but he's interrupted by an angry Flair, his head bandaged up, storming in and backed up by Anderson and Wyndham. Flair rips the belt out of Fujinami's hands, declaring it his, and overturns the table. Fujinami, stunned, goes to confront him, but Anderson and Wyndham hold Flair back as two Japanese wrestlers hold Fujinami back to prevent any fisticuffs. Flair tells Fujinami if he wants to get the belt, he can come to try and take it in America. Hello, Super Brawl.
Hey, yeah.
Just as Flair is leaving, Tony steps into camera view for a second, gives a whoops look, and steps back. Tony won't look that embarrassed to be on camera again until Bash of the Beach 2000.
Heyo.
JR notes that this will have international repercussions. JR asks Fujinami for his feelings, and Fujinami says he doesn't know the English, then says in pretty decent English that he pinned Flair for the 1-2-3, he's the winner, and Flair has taken his belt. Don't sell yourself short, man.
Yeah, if you asked me to say that in Japanese, I would not be able to do it.
No, not at all.
I can say thank you very much, but, not a big flex there.
A good setup segment for the eventual Super Brawl 1 here, which will feature the rematch between these two.
Yeah.
As you noted, Al, from WCW's perspective, it's Flair again defending the title he never actually lost, but from New Japan's, is Flair challenging for the belt that Fujinami won and Flair stole.
Yes. In a weird way, it kind of works. It's a shame that, again, they kind of annoyed certain people, like, booking the shows.
Yeah.
And the press about it. But, like, the way they play off the angle is in here does work as Flair's just a dastardly he will steal the belt. As you want it, gotta come get me.
100%. I have no objection to how this is presented on the actual show.
Yeah.
It's WCW's treatment of it afterwards that is suspect, but Flair being a jerk, believing he didn't lose the title and stealing the belt, that's fine. That's just a wrestling angle.
Of course, yeah. A more common thing WWE does now, and they got taken from other sports, is they'll have these post-show press junkets where they sit at a table with a big backdrop, the show and sponsors, and they talk to regular press and wrestling press. So it's kind of a weird proto-version of that on this show in that last segment.
Mm-hmm.
Even if obviously the bells and whistles used in 2024 to present that are much different than the let's sort of walk in and see people talking backstage the presentation you get on the show.
Yeah. We fade out on Fujinami still complaining to JR and see the show logo one more time. And Supershow 1 is done. So overall thoughts on Supershow 1?
It's a very strong show. It's nice to see a big show like this in the Shoot Arena. It's a very different crowd, which is nice. There's really only one blemish on the show, and obviously you know what that is. And even then, it's not this terrible thing that I think fully drags it down, like, a whole grade point, like from a A to B or anything. It's a fairly short, silly segment that's not great.
Yeah.
Otherwise, the show features some really interesting matchups and pairings. It's nice seeing new feuds are setting up, like building up Fujinami Flair rematch, a Super Brawl, reuniting old rivalries, even if not really committing to them, like Sting and Muta, and just other pairings, like seeing Wyndham and Anderson teaming together here at a tag match Japan. Pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
There's definitely a big feel to it. As mentioned, there's definitely some weird edits here, and like they'll randomly cut to JR and them, and we know they cut around 4 matches for various reasons. So there's a certain disconnected nature to it, but if you watch this version, I think it's still okay. Especially if you don't know there's 4 matches missing. I don't think you go, wait, where's it? This feels off.
No, not really.
It's only knowing the full story and knowing, and even then I'm not entirely sure where they cut them because it's shuffled around a bit. But yeah, it's a very strong show. And it's nice seeing a Japanese show. It's only fair after getting a one-off tease between Starrcade 95, even if a little hint of it in 96, with like the opening like 2 or 3 matches all being New Japan performers as well. I don't really have too many complaints about this show.
Yeah, I thought this was terrific. Even as a cut down version of a much longer show, Supershow I has a good flow, a generally good to great collection of matches, Elegante versus Big Cat aside, and a lot of stars that we've rarely and in some cases never seen on other WCW shows. It made it a unique and really fun experience, and I'm very glad that we've decided to do this series.
Mm-hmm.
Despite being cut up and in some cases reordered, WCW's version of the show still feels pretty smoothly produced. The omissions aren't jarring, and there's not really anything distracting about the structure of the show. I'm really relieved to be saying that. I thought going into this that it would be a hatchet job that would detract from the enjoyment of the show, but it didn't.
Mm-hmm.
It's a good job that most of the matches are really good, as there's not much that happens on the show outside of them. We get some good points of ceremony that help the show feel bigger, especially during entrances for the later matches and victories in title matches, but the only promos are Sting's short one and Fujinami's quick interview with JR. Other than that, it's just match, JR and Tony for a second, match, and so on. Speaking of JR and Tony, they are actually a really good team.
Yeah.
I was expecting it to be a bit awkward as they're both play-by-play guys. I was afraid they'd end up both trying to do that and talking over each other or something, but they seem to have worked out a sharing of duties quite well, and Tony seems to slide into color commentary a bit and leave more of the call to JR. They made a good team and had some quite good discussions about match strategy and wrestler personalities and fighting styles. They do lack a little tension, since neither plays heel, but I don't mind hearing something different than the mid to late 90s norm here.
That's fair, yeah.
Otherwise, presentation was generally strong and the show had a big, important feel, aided by the size of the crowd and the aforementioned ceremony, as well as moments like wrestlers gathering around the ring just to watch the last 2 matches. I always love seeing that, like, this is important to the performers as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's a lot that went into making this feel big, and it worked. So yes, I really enjoyed this one a lot. It's a good show, and it gave me a chance to see some New Japan favorites and familiarize myself with some wrestlers that I'd never seen. It's a really easy recommendation. Here's hoping the remaining shows will be just as good.
Yeah. It's just a shame that for whatever issue of rights or idea of rights or however this has worked out, that this isn't more easily available.
Yes.
That's the thing I'd say.
Yeah.
Because I know from invitation, like New Japan is super strict with their footage. Like you use it at all on YouTube, boom, they go right after you. But at the same time, I'm really curious because like this aired on pay-per-view by WCW, and WWF bought their entire tape library, which should include this show.
There's got to be some complicated rights thing stopping it from going on the network.
I would love to know what the reason is. I feel like it's probably not a simple answer.
Yeah, you and I were genuinely not sure we were ever going to get to do this series until you found where we could get a watch.
Absolutely, yeah. I'm glad we did, for sure.
Match of the night and MVP. So, Al, what is your match of the night?
There's a lot of strong matches here. I really liked the Steiners tag match. Quite enjoyed the Horsemen tag match as well. 6-man match was fun. Really anything, and again, not to pick on poor guy, but as he's not around anymore, but everything other than the El Gigante match with Big Cat was good. For me, I think the match that really stood out, even if it didn't have the same level of epic story to it, and nice to see a crowd reaction, but the one that just felt the most visceral and really exciting to watch, and one I could easily see myself revisiting with no caveats, is the Steiners versus Hase and Sasaki. I really enjoyed that match.
Like you, I would say you could make an argument for every match but Elegante versus Big Cat.
Mm-hmm.
My opinion has changed a number of times over the past few days. But yeah, I'm going to go with the Steiners versus Sasaki and Hase as well.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a great, fast-paced, hard-hitting battle between two teams at the top of their game.
Mm-hmm.
Really, really excellent.
Yeah.
MVP?
It's a tricky one because, I mean, so many people really shine, like the Steiners in their tag matches, Hase Sasaki again in their match. A lot of guys shine. Sting especially is really good.
Oh, yeah.
I could easily see a pick for Sting. Muta as well. Flair does quite a good job. He's very minor miscues throughout. I don't really hold that against him. The one thing guy shined for me the most here, because I don't get to see him a lot, and he does such a good job here in a big high stakes match, I'm going with Fujinami.
Okay, very fair.
He was quite good. He delivered. He had the most to live up to in this show, and he absolutely delivered.
Yeah, there's a ton of great performances, including but not limited to Fujinami, Flair, Hase, Sting, Muta, Wyndham, Sasaki. I'm going to use a similar explanation, I think, but a different person.
Okay.
I am giving this one to Hiroshi Hase.
Okay.
Number one, he is terrific, so quick and agile and charismatic, but also surprisingly strong. And number two, as with you and Fujinami, we just don't get to see this guy very much, so I may not get the chance to give it to him again.
Yeah.
I really, really enjoyed his work. He was just fun to watch.
Mm-hmm. Hase is one of two people on this show that is currently in elected office.
Yep.
Hase is currently the governor of the Ishikawa Prefecture in Japan.
Okay.
Elected in 2022. He served in the Japanese Diet and other forms as well, but he's currently there right now. The other person who surprisingly has a high elected office, and as far as I can tell is still there, is Tim Horner.
Okay.
Tim Horner was elected to be county commissioner in Hamilton County, Tennessee. I do my research. I went to Hamilton County, Tennessee's website, and I found a picture of him there. He basically looks like you would think he looked like if you watch this show. It's him, 30 years older without the mullet.
That is funny.
That's the same dude.
Oh, that is interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And that wraps up our review of Supershow I. If you've enjoyed listening to us tonight, you can find us on Facebook as Let's Go to the Ring. A link will be available in the episode description. Follow us for episode announcements and other show details, and share your own thoughts about each show as we go through. You can subscribe to our show on Apple Podcast, YouTube, YouTube Music, Audible, iHeartRadio, Spotify, TuneIn, or Pandora. And please, if you've enjoyed this show, give us a rating or review, and share the show through your favorite social media platforms to help others discover us. Many thanks to ProWrestlingHistory.com for attendance figures, and Gina Trujillo for our logo. Next up, WCW New Japan Super Show 2, or in Japan, Super Warriors in Tokyo Dome.
Great title.
Seriously, WCW, why did you rename that?
Right?
This time, it looks like we'll actually get to see Super Strong Machine.
Hey.
Plus, Lex Luger actually does have to wrestle in Japan. And Vader gets to try his hand at getting a good match out of Elegante. Rooting for you, pal.
Doing the Lord's work, yeah.
This is Bob Moore for Alec Pridgeon, signing off. Good night, everybody.
Happy wrestling.